item is to adopt the agenda. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays or abstentions? Seeing none, the motion passed. The next item is to motion to acknowledge the minutes of the June 13th, 2022 meeting. I have a motion.
I'll move it.
Second.
Okay, motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? Seeing none, the motion passed. Tonight, as part of our ongoing series for having various community awareness types of presentations, I invited Ann Saylor here tonight from Dutchess County, and she's going to present on the housing study that has been done by the county. Ann is a longtime friend to the town. We've seen her, work with her on many other initiatives, so thank you, Ann, for coming up, and please give your presentation as you see, and I'm sure the board and then the attendees will also have some questions for you.
And I'm also is this on? I'm also a former resident of Wappingers. I actually lived in the village when I was first born, and then lived here more recently, in probably about 5 or 6 years, over on Maloney and Smith Crossing.
okay.
So I know the town well. So thank you very much for inviting me. I'm actually here today. So my partner in crime, Heather Lavarnway, who's a senior planner, was actually the lead on this project. So I hope you'll indulge me if not mess up, but not quite as nuanced as her. But she's on vacation today, so I wanted to come down and do this for you. So we had started talking about doing a housing needs assessment in 2019. We had last done one in 2008. We actually started in August of 2007. Those of you who know anything about that, that was the beginning of the housing crash. So we tend to have a record of wanting to do housing studies at exciting times, because after we decided to do this housing study, COVID hit in early 2020. So we didn't start it in 2020. Then we started in 2021, and we released it in 2022. And if you could, thanks. So like I said, this is the first since 2008 that we've done, and we did have a steering committee of a variety of people to give us input as we were going through the process to see if we were sort of understanding the market, what was going on in different parts of the community, and we worked with them through this. Next. So the goal of this was to understand the existing patterns of housing and demand and need, both countywide and within the county. So we looked at this within regions. We also wanted to anticipate the future level of demand so that we can be proactive instead of reactive in our planning, which too many times we are, and then develop recommendations to guide policy and public and private investment going forward. So when we did it, we used the latest data that was available. So from federal, state, and local sources, this is primarily census data we used. As you can imagine, doing a study in 2021 with census data means that we did not have data that shows the full impact of COVID. The full impact of COVID, the data for that will probably not be available till next year. And even then, whatever the short-term impact, none of us know really what the long-term impact of this is. And we felt very strongly that the patterns we saw in 19 didn't fundamentally change. Maybe they were exacerbated by COVID, they were made more extreme, but that the patterns that we saw in the market beforehand were still there, and that we could make some decisions based on that data. So the first part of the study was a market analysis. I encourage you to really look at the whole thing. There was a lot of information. Unlike a lot of the reports that planners like me like to do, which is pages and pages of data, we tried to make this sort of visually appealing with graphics and infographics. That was something that was really important to us. And so I really encourage you to look at it. If we can start with some of the interesting things. So there's a couple things to understand about what's going on, what has been going on, and what is projected to go on in our community. So, and I'm a local girl, right? So I know Dutchess County is growing. But the data shows that we are already leveling off, and the projections are for our population to start declining in this county. So, that is something for everybody to be concerned about. And I understand, because I've grown up here. I grew up in Beekman when the first big development of Dalton Farms, and my father was on the planning board. I mean, he ran out of a meeting because the sheriff's was there and they ran out the last. So I know what people feel about growth, right? But it's also important to understand that a declining population is also scary for us. And that is the projection. I mean, you can ask a place, I don't mean to be dramatic, but you can ask a place like Detroit about what happens when your population starts to decline. And at a very personal level, I can tell you that, you know, the idea of selling your house into a declining population market can be a little challenging. So it's something for us to consider about the other side of growth is of declining population. So if you look at one of the reasons our population is declining is our household size is declining. And so it went from 2.63 to 2.42 in 20 years. Now, one of the reasons for that, if you can go to the next slide, is that we are an aging population. At some level, this is not unique to Dutchess County. Our country is aging. But I'd like to start here with the median age on the right-hand side first. If you'll see that we are actually aging faster as a community than the country as a whole. So in 2000, in 2000, we were 1.4 years older than the country. In 2019, we are 4.1 years older than the country median average. And for anybody who knows anything about statistics, when you have very large numbers like that, that is a very significant increase in our average age. And it's something that we need to consider. Now, when you look at the aging, then what you have here next is showing which groups of the population countywide are going to be declining, which are increasing. You can see we're declining except for the 20 to 24, we're declining in the under 44 group, and we are increasing in my age category and up, 45, 55, 65 and up is increasing significantly in our communities. Next, Joe. So then one of the things that we've looked at is housing cost and income, because obviously, you know, to some degree, your ability to afford something is all relative to what you make, right? And so in the teal is owner, in the pink is renter. And the darker one shows home values and how much they've increased. So home values in this period increased 90%. And then incomes increased almost 60%. And I should point out the red line here, the red line is inflation, okay? Not today's inflation, but the inflation from 2000 to 2019. So there you can see housing values increased more than incomes, but they both outpaced inflation. The renter side tells a different story. Rents went up 70% in the renter side, and on the income side, it only went up a little, about 35%, and renters' incomes did not keep pace with inflation. The other thing to sort of tell you here is what that's looking at is home value, right? So I know for me, I bought my home here. If the value goes up, my mortgage doesn't change, right? But if you look on the renter side, that's rent. People's rent continues to go up. So the affordability issue is actually bigger there than even this chart shows you. Because again, our mortgages are usually fixed and they don't go up even as our income goes up. Our taxes may go up, right, and our insurance goes up a little bit, but our mortgage is generally fixed, most of us. So then what we did, we looked at both the cost burden for owner and renter. I did not show you the owner here because it shows sort of a similar trend, but not as extreme, okay? So it does show, and you can look at it in the chart, but for the interest of sort of brevity, we're showing you the renter chart because it's the most significant change. And what this shows you is in each income category, how the number of people who are cost burdened has changed. Cost burden is defined as people pay more than 30% of their income on their housing. That is what's considered affordable. And you'll see at the low end here, people who are very low income used to be 78% cost burdened, and now they're 91 and 92%. That's clearly a change. It's significant. But then if you look through, let's look at the middle one that's bounded in blue. In 20 years ago, that category would have been 10% rent burdened. They are now 71% of the people there are rent burdened. So what we're seeing is that the rent burden, because the rents are so high, is really moving up into the higher income brackets. It used to be when you were in the middle, you're sort of okay. It was much better. But because rents are so high and incomes aren't keeping up, that burden is really becoming dramatic, even at the middle income level. And even you can see people between $50,000 and $75,000. You have 34% of them are paying more than 30% of their income. And that's a really significant change. So this is actually probably my favorite chart. Might not be yours, but it's mine. This breaks down the incomes into, because I'm a geek, so this is in quintiles. And so this shows each quintile of income and shows how much extra money that quintile has today compared to just 10 years ago, 9 years ago, actually. So for the first quintile, the lowest quintile, and it shows you what those numbers are now, that group has 5.8% more money per month, and that's $148. If we move to the top quintile, or even if we go to the 80% quintile, they've had a 25% increase in their income, and that is equivalent of $2,500. And at the top, it's about 23%, and they have $4,000. That's per month. And one of the issues we're having is that those households are really outcompeting everybody else in the marketplace because there's not a sufficient supply. As you can imagine, the people with the most money generally win, right? And that's what's happening in our housing market. So the next thing that we did, when I say we, the consultants did for us, they were great, was what they did was what we call a gaps analysis. So what they did was they took basically a huge list of all the incomes in the county and all the housing costs in the county. And then they do a matching system to show where there are gaps. Now, we know people don't match perfectly. Some people choose a more expensive house than they can afford. Some people choose a less expensive house than they can afford. But this gives us a sense of at least just the market dynamics and whether the market is actually sort of matching, whether people match. And so what you will see, I think, is something that's interesting. What I hear a lot from people is they tend to be in one of two camps. There's people who say, we don't need any more luxury housing, we need affordable housing. And then there's people that say, all we need is affordable housing and no more luxury. Did I just repeat myself? I'm not sure. But they tend to be in either camp. And what the story tells us when we look throughout the county is that we all need both. And you'll see here, you can see where the deficit and the surplus. So we have a deficit on both the owner and the renter side in the lower, what's needed for lower income people, but also for higher income people, for luxury housing, what you would call luxury housing. So that is something that's important for us to understand as a community. Next one. So I apologize for this. This is because Heather, this is hard for you to see because it's fuzzy, and I can give you a good version of this. I apologize. I couldn't get, Heather has been doing the graphics on this, and she didn't do this before. This is not her fault. I forgot to ask her before she went on vacation. But it's actually okay that you can't see this, because all you need to see is the bands of color. So what happens was we broke the county into regions, okay? We did the two cities separately, but then we broke into regions. So we put Beekman, Fishkill, East Fishkill, and Wappingers together. And all you need to see is if you look, just like I said, where there's a gap, where you have the line. And so the first one's renters, the second one's owner, and there's a line. Where you have a bar below the line, you have a deficit. Where you have bars above the line, you have a surplus. So you can see on the owner side, this region has a surplus on the sort of expensive owner side. And then on the pink, you can see you have lines below, both on the low income and the high. See the dark purple line? You can see the dark purple line is a deficit on high income renter, and then you have a deficit on affordable renter. So this region has the same trends as the countywide, that we have countywide.
So just to clarify,
Sure.
Because I'm looking at the report here,
Mm-hmm.
for Beekman, Fishkill, East Fishkill, Wappinger, seeing a deficit of 75,000 plus. Is that correct?
No, that's the income. The 75,000 is the income.
Okay, so the far right bar.
It's a deficit of housing for people making 75,000 plus.
Right, that's what
Yeah,
I'm saying.
okay.
So
No, I
there's
thought you
a,
meant 75,000 units, I'm
we're
sorry.
showing a deficit in housing in this region for folks that are making $75,000.
Of about, even I'm struggling here to read my own, let me look at this here, I have it here.
Looks like 1,500.
Yeah. About that.
So we're a 1,500 unit deficit for individuals making 75,000 plus, which is interesting because you would think that a deficit would show for affordable or lower income housing, which it does, but the larger deficit, according to this analysis, is for those making $75,000 or more.
I think the issue is that the lower income category is broken into sort of two categories. So
Okay.
the 75, so I think you'd have to put those two
So,
categories.
yeah, so less than 20,000 and then 20,000 to 34,999.
Right. If you
Yeah,
added
so if
tho-
you added those two together, I see it now, okay.
They would be more.
So so basically equally on both ends of the spectrum here, there's a deficit from one extreme to the other.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's something that we're seeing consistently across the county.
So when you take all four towns into account, right, so East Fishkill, which is booming, has a lot of industry, a lot of big manufacturing, computer jobs, et cetera, doesn't that skew it more with them being part of the analysis?
So you are all a little different, but I guess, it's interesting, I've been doing this for 30 years now, 34 years. And, people are right, and I live in Poughkeepsie now, I lived in Wappingers, I grew up in Beekman, I lived in Rhinebeck for a while. And the communities all are unique, you are. But there's also a lot of commonality between you. And I would say, yes, East Fishkill has some differences for you. But I can also tell you, I did look specifically at some data for Wappingers before I came here. The number of, let's look at just Wappingers, and the number of renters who are cost burdened in this community. And that number is 47.8%. So 47.8% of the renters in this community are paying more than 30% of their income. And that's not good for them because, it's stressful for the family, but it's also not good, I think, for a lot of us. If they're spending it on housing, they can't spend it in our restaurants. They can't spend it in the grocery store. They can't save for a down payment to buy a house, to buy our houses when we want to sell. So there are implications not just for that family, but for the rest of us when people are spending all of their money on housing. They can't spend it on the other things and support the businesses in our community. So the next thing we did, Joe, if you can, is we wanted to develop some recommendations to do both at the county level and that communities could engage in. Joe, thank you. So clearly the greatest level of need is for renters under 50,000. So, and that's the focus of this report. Obviously, we don't generally at the government talk about, we're not going to do a report, and we're certainly not going to financially support luxury housing, right? That's the job of the private market. So what we're looking at is the greatest level of need for renters under $50,000, and that's where we want to focus our efforts. Next. So what we did was try to establish a goal countywide and then try to divide that goal up amongst the regions of the county. We are very intentionally not necessarily calling this building, we are calling it interventions. And the reason for that is if this population decline happens, you want to be very careful about building lots of housing in a declining market. Now, it can be a chicken and egg. Is it declining because we are not providing the product that the marketplace wants? Look, I have friends leaving now.
I have a lot of friends leaving
Right.
New York.
Right.
And
I have-
I'm sorry, and it's, it's rampant.
Yeah.
It's too expensive to live here, is what I'm told. The state does not do anything to
Right.
make it attractive, and they're not going to stay here.
Right.
And they're all moving. And as far as the lower income people coming in, there's a lot of jobs out there, unfortunately, and the pay isn't going up to live in this area.
Yeah.
So it's a catch-22.
It is. But I would also say, not everybody is leaving, and I have
A
friends.
lot of people are leaving.
I
If you
understand.
look at the statistics, I think the biggest place that's moving up the spectrum is Florida.
Right. So if
I
you-
don't see New York getting a big influx of people.
So
And
if-
I would hate to, I would debate you on that.
Okay, so if I could just finish, my thought was, People are leaving for a variety of reasons. I have friends that are leaving, right? Some of them leave because of the weather. Some of them leave because of the taxes. But some of them are leaving because there is not the product that they want here. They are leaving because there are more affordable apartments and more affordable and just more sort of dense housing. I have friends who have left here to go up, even up to Queensbury in within New York because they have townhouses and condos, and people are renting. And we're also seeing, I understand there's this thing about renting, but I know people who are selling single-family homes. If you look at Eastdale Village right now, people are selling single-family homes and moving into Eastdale Village because a lot of people do want to stay in New York. I mean, I'm one of those people that wants to stay in New York, and there are a lot of people who want to stay, and they may not want to own a home and maintain that, and I think we need to provide
I got to
options.
interrupt you for a minute. You're talking about Queensbury, New York?
Yeah.
Isn't that where Malta? And that's where Global Foundries is, if I'm correct. That's whole area up there was built because Global Foundries left this area and moved up there, and there's a lot of jobs. And I
So-
got to be honest, I've spent a lot of time up at Lake George area and all that area. I have, and that's where I've seen the transition of people moving because there were jobs. There was a manufacturing facility there. Now,
Well,
down
they're
here, we lost a
retirees.
big one. Okay, now, I got to be honest with you. I have people that work both at IBM and Global Foundries, and no, they're not staying here. It's a beautiful area. If you make like 6 figures and you buy a lake house, that's fine. But they're not staying in New York. I'm sorry.
So we are also seeing, though, people, I mean, we all can tell anecdotes about people, and we are seeing people moving to Pennsylvania and Delaware outside of Philly, where they're providing more housing choices for people. So I think that it's just important to understand that not everybody is leaving just because of the taxes and just because of the weather. They are leaving because they have other housing stock. So if we can. So again, like I said, what we did was Joey, if you could just, thank you.
So before you change that, just go back
Sure.
for 1 second. So of the 2155 interventions, 108 average per year, how many is actually equated to Wappingers?
So that's what the next slide is.
Okay.
I'm going to get to the next slide.
All right.
So what we did, and I could actually maybe, this is just an explanation slide. So what we tried to do was to figure out a way to sort of divide these up equitably. And you can do very convoluted formulas. And what we did was try to look at a distribution based on households, the number of renter households under 50,000, and also where the jobs are located. And one of the reasons we focused on jobs is obviously that's the place that people need to sort of get to the most. It also drives a lot of the sort of traffic that people are concerned about. But also jobs can be a proxy for infrastructure. Businesses tend to go where there's infrastructure that they can build on. So we thought that was a good proxy for that. And so then what we did was we broke this up into regions. I'll be honest with you, we were a little conflicted about whether to break it to town, because for us, we think people sort of see sort of regionally. I know often when people are looking to buy a house, my friends looking to buy a house, they don't say, I just want to live in Wappingers. They say, I'm at Wappingers, Fishkill, East Fishkill, somewhere in the sort of area. They may have a school district, but people don't tend to be that so specific. They want to be sort of proximate to their jobs or some family. Or there are some people.
I think that's key, be close to the jobs, because if you're commuting down to the city or Westchester, you're not going to move north up Poughkeepsie. You're just not going to do it because it takes you too long to get there. I used to commute, I know.
Yeah.
So
No.
that is very key.
Yeah, it is key. But I think whether they live on the Wappinger line or the East Fishkill line, it doesn't matter to them necessarily. They may relate to them for
No.
other reasons, taxes or whatever, but for the commute, they don't, which is why we looked regionally. So then we did divide that number up into a total number and then an annual number. We know that we're not necessarily proposing that Wappinger would build 10 units a year. It may be that you build 50 units one year, right? And then you build nothing for the next 4 years, right? Because a development may come in that is an affordable development that's 50 units or 80 units, and you'll build like maybe 2 or 3 of those over that period.
So when you say intervention, exactly what is that?
So that's where, right now, I think we're thinking that the interventions, clearly, we need to do some building. But again, as I said, if the population decline that we're projecting is, you don't want to keep putting more money into the market, in which case we may want to look at considering doing some vouchers to help existing residents have things be more affordable. A local sort of voucher. It's not something that we're saying we're going to do right now. It's just something that's an option if you have an affordability problem. But we're not proposing that. It was just something that is possible as an intervention. And I can talk to you about the other things we can do as a community.
So to be
I
very,
think that's good, but you have to keep in mind, too, we have seniors living here. Are they going to be considered for vouchers?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that's another problem.
Many of you know, I mean, one of the largest, people talk a lot about Section 8, which is known as the Housing Choice Vouchers. Senior citizens, there are a lot of senior citizens on Section 8. They get a lot of the benefit from that program.
But I have a lot of them that are not on Section 8, and they're trying to
Yeah.
make ends meet here.
Yep.
And if we're going to start giving vouchers to people that don't live here to attract them to come
Yeah.
here, that's going to cause a major problem.
And I did not propose that we would
I'm
be
just making sure.
giving vouchers to people out here. We would definitely want it to be people who are here, because remember, the issue is we're saying we have cost-burdened people here. It wouldn't make sense for us to give vouchers to people who aren't here.
Just want to be
We would
clear.
give them-
There's a lot of things
Yeah.
that happen that are not.
Yeah, no, I understand. So if we
so
can,
just to be clear on the 10, is that 2 new housing projects? Is it 10 new homes? Is it 10 new
could-
complexes?
it really-
Exactly what is that?
It is for renters, focused on renters under $50,000. So I would say now, because of where we are, we clearly need to build some housing at this moment. It would be, because remember, this is a 20-year report. This is a projection out for 20 years. So we will have to keep watching what we need to build. Right now, we clearly need, the market shows, units are absorbed the minute they're in the marketplace, that we need more units. But that may change over time, in that those interventions needs to change, okay? Is that a little more clear? And if I can go to some...
But I think,
Yep.
what the councilman's asking is, what is the basis for the 10? Is it developments, houses, apartment complexes?
It would be apartments.
What are the units?
It would be apartments.
So how many, so you're saying you want 10 units, 10 brand-new
So
units that have
if I-
120
if I
people?
can-
I mean, I'm just trying to
One-
get
right.
clarification on what
One
you're...
of the things, and again, we struggled with this idea of putting an annual number, because 10, that's not how the market's going to necessarily absorb 10 at a time. And and we've had this problem as we've talked about this. What we're saying really is, over the next 20 years, Wappingers should do 202 affordable units for renters under $50,000. That's what we're saying. We wanted to make that feel manageable to people, and so that's why we broke that 202 down into 10 units a year. But it really is, it really is over 20 years, it's 200. So again, you may have a 60 unit, and then maybe it would be helpful if we look at some of the other interventions, because
Yeah,
there's
because
other
it sounds
ways
like you're excluding any kind of new homes being built. This is basically an
But-
affordable housing
Right.
discussion tonight, and
Right.
is that really what
Because-
we want to
well,
do,
that was
if we
the
look
focus-
at percentages?
That was the focus of our study, but we did talk about earlier the need for some higher income housing on the renter side, right? So this was the focus of ours, was affordable, but we did call out the need for some market. We just didn't do the market study for that. But if we can go to the other interventions. Thanks.
Just the rest of the screen?
No, just move to the next slide. Move to the next slide. Because we talk through here, so one of the things the county has done, and I'll get to the next slide, which will talk about interventions. The county has committed, and the county executive has committed up to create a county housing trust fund to help support efforts to provide more affordable and workforce housing.
How much money did they set aside, do you know?
So it's $2 million a year that we're going to the legislature in August for, but there's also an initial down payment on that of $13 million to make an investment right now. And the goal, what we want to do is, there's a lot of there's state money and federal money out there. They tend to be very big projects. And sometimes they don't work specifically for our communities. So this would be an idea that we could do something that does a little more fits maybe into our community, do some smaller scale things. And maybe if you go to the next one, I can show you some of the things. So one of the things a couple of things we wanted to do with the money was help communities identify sites and get them ready for construction if that's what they wanted. There's also a rehabilitation program for existing rentals. So we have rentals in this community that are affordable, but sometimes they just need repairs, and we could do repairs and then put a restriction on them to keep them affordable. So sometimes you can do that or have them lower the rent for that in our existing stock. We could do inclusionary policies. So let's say you have a development that is, let's say, doing 100 units of luxury housing. You could have a requirement that says we would like 10% of those affordable. So that's one of the places that you could get it, and you'd get a true mixed income. Instead of building a 50-unit affordable development, you could have 10 affordable units in a 100-unit development, or 5 affordable units in a 50-unit development.
So that would satisfy the interventions?
Yep, that would be definitely. We did actually put in here the idea of subordinate mortgages to help people into home ownership. And the reason for that is housing is a continuum, right? People go from renting to owning. Often they go then from owning back to renting. And if that continuum doesn't work, if there's like sort of a block, and often that block is a down payment, you can help the renter market by helping people get into the owner market and free up the renter market.
Wasn't there a problem with that with Fannie Mae? Putting people in homes that they couldn't
Well,
afford?
that was an underwriting issue. And the
But that was
underwriting,
but basically, it was putting people in homes that was having a problem getting the mortgage. It was to help them get a home, right?
right. But what they did was they were really playing fast and loose with the underwriting standards. That is not what we're proposing. People would have very high credit scores. Their percentage of income would be very regulated. There were a lot of no-doc, what they would call no-doc mortgages. And so people basically lied and said what they had. This would be different. This would be something like giving somebody $20,000 to help with the down payment and closing cost, but they would be able to afford the mortgage. And there is not this sort of wild west of underwriting that there was back then. And I was actually just reading on Bloomberg a thing that they were talking about. There's going to be a correction in the housing market, but they don't think it's that bad because the underwriting is sound on our mortgages these days. We are talking to the IDA about some tax exemption, and then there is this last, and it's intentionally put here as last, is this idea of as the market changes, maybe we would move into doing some housing vouchers. But that is a heavy lift because honestly, it's a pretty administratively heavy program because you want to make sure it's going to people who are in your community, who are deserving, and so there's a lot of background that you have to do for that. So that is there, but it is an option. And that's the housing needs assessment. That's the end of the recommendations. I know you guys asked some questions during this. I don't know if you have any more questions?
Sure. So the village of Wappingers Falls would have been included in the respective towns in the analysis, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Obviously, there are significantly different demographics within the boundaries of the village than the towns overall.
Yep.
And I do believe that some of the programs you just talked about with respect to intervention could be applicable to existing structures in the village that could use some assistance with renovation to possibly get more affordable rental housing. Is there a definition for affordable housing now? I know listen, I've been here for a while. I know it's changed. Let's say pre 40% inflation. Is there a definition?
So that's the problem. This is, I have for 34 years, I have been trying to come up, and other people have, with what is affordable housing, right? Because affordable housing is a relative term. I have this presentation I do where I show Bill Gates' house, right? That house is affordable to him, right? Because he makes housing is affordable if you're paying 30% of your income.
Okay.
That's what it is. But when we talk about building affordable housing or workforce housing, we're often looking at people who just in the market aren't able to afford the market. And normally we're talking about people who make 80% of median or below.
Okay.
So you'll rarely find a government program or a program for people at like 100 or sometimes in very hot markets you might go up that high, but generally we're talking 80% of median or below.
So understanding that we're facing an anomaly right now with what's happening in the housing market, we're looking at this kind of level-headed here because what's happening right now is crazy off the charts. But as I always say, looking at the town from 30,000 feet, yes, I agree with much of your analysis here. There certainly is a gap on both ends of the spectrum. We have, we wonder why we have a deficit of millennials and those in their 20s and 30s remaining here in this town or in this county is because the jobs aren't here and the affordability is not here. You know, I have the distinct responsibility of being involved in a volunteer firehouse along with past Chief Flower, who's sitting out there, and trying to retain members is almost impossible, because once they move out of their parents' house, they can't afford to stay here. And that's a real challenge for any volunteer organization that's part of the fabric of a community, keeping folks here. Many of them either go to the far western parts of New York State or they go to the far southern parts of the country and they don't return. So finding, I think, a recipe for success involves not only identifying the housing that you've done here, but at the same time identifying employment through other programs and partnerships to keep folks here in this county. I mean, I understand that working remote and virtual, that's a great thing at the moment. I don't necessarily think it's all going to stay around, but we do need to work harder to keep the next generation here in this town. That said, population decline. This town, if you look at the census, I think it was 2000 to 2010, had a 0% growth. I believe that's the 10-year period. We've had very conservative growth here in this town. I think the last 10 years in the most recent census, we've seen the most growth, but we've seen some large projects come to fruition here on the eastern side of town as well. My position is we need to continue to thrive. We need to continue to retain population, and we need to continue to grow in population in order to continue to live and breathe here as a town. The Eastdale Village model that you mentioned earlier, which I've kind of watched this project as it's grown initially on 60 acres of what they've done there. The town center approach we had and continue to have in our comprehensive plan, and I think every comprehensive plan has a town center approach somewhere in it. And I think that as we look at some of the projects that are occurring around Dutchess, whether it be Eastdale Village or whether it be the former Hudson River Psychiatric Center, where housing would be co-located with commercial entities. I have said from this dais a number of times that I think that is a direction that we need to be looking into, having housing that's going to feed a potential commercial, and vice versa, I think is something we need to be exploring. But Eastdale Village price points are significant. I mean, I don't believe there's any of quote-unquote affordable element to that project at all.
There's not.
And my understanding is it's 95% plus
Sold out.
sold out.
100% generally, and leased up 3 months before the units are done. I mean,
that
that's
is-
that's the demand. And the same thing at, like, the Overlook, the same thing down at Dutton.
Dutton, the same thing.
You know,
I mean, you're
and
talking.
we're seeing a
Oh, we saw the
trend.
same thing with Old Hopewell Commons. With
Yeah.
Well, Old Hopewell Commons is really small compared to Dutton, but I mean, you're seeing these huge projects come in, and even the one across from the Grandview, the Benora property, before they're even done, they're totally
Yeah.
sold out. And I understand that we need to be looking at, less than $50,000 a year to fill that need. But that said, there's clearly, I would argue, even more of a need for this market rate housing that can be anywhere from $2,000, $2,200 a month, which it amazes me that so many people are doing that rather than trying to buy a home. And then you can look at your analysis and at that time, prior to what's happening right now, there's this whole domino effect going on where people are getting forced into renting when they could be buying homes because people that are in the homes aren't moving into
Right.
rental properties. So that's what I'm kind of perplexed on how we've gotten to this position where there's such a demand for this market rate housing.
If I could say a couple of things. One is, it's interesting that one of the things the consultant said to us is that people are staying in their homes, older people, way longer than they expected, right? Than you would have projected. Now, some of that is things like star exemptions make it easier for people to stay, and those are a good thing. But even good things there's consequences to those, But the reality is, they can't stay there forever. It's just the reality. I have an 87-year-old mother, And so there is going to be a point at which that sort of breaks, and those units are going to start coming on the market. We just don't know when that was. I wanted to say something about the jobs and housing. I hear this a lot. I see it on Facebook. We don't need more jobs. We don't need more housing. We need more jobs. But every person with a job needs a place to lay their head at night.
Right.
And what we're hearing is businesses are looking here saying there's not the housing stock here. We hear stories, Marist College has said they try to recruit people, and people look and say, high-income people, you don't have the product. I can get something, not even more affordable, just sort of nicer in another area. And so they're struggling to recruit. So we are hearing that a lot. And I hope we were clear, while our focus was on sort of moderate and workforce housing, we would agree with you on the need, and our charts show the deficit at the high end. And again, that cascades. That high-income person can't get what they want, they buy down. Then they force the next group to buy down.
Right.
They force the next group to buy down, and it's a cascade that you have.
Well, in conclusion, from my perspective, I thank you for translating this into, well, I don't want to be offensive. It's a great report, but thank you for taking it and putting it into a easy-to-understand presentation. It's fascinating when you read this information here. I guess in a couple years, when things get back to semi-normal, it'll be interesting to see how what's happening right now weighs on
Yeah.
this, information.
And we're starting to see some moderating already on some prices.
Oh, good.
We're starting to see some,
Okay.
Well, there's
so-
the bubble.
Yeah.
There is a bubble right now.
Yeah.
These houses are priced way out of what they are worth.
Yep.
But I agree
Agree.
with Councilman Beal. We have a problem with industry in this area. Beacon, disposable income, most of the places that are down there, those businesses. People that live there are being forced out of their homes. Wappingers, we have apartment complexes here, but we have no industry. What do we have? Hospital, we could use another hospital. We have a mall down in Fishkill that's been empty for, 20 years?
More than that.
Okay? No, it's awful. It's
I know.
absolutely awful.
The Maze Mall, I remember the first
No,
first
me too.
escalator
I've
in
lived
Dutchess
here.
County.
I've lived here my entire life.
Yeah.
I've seen it. I've seen apartment complexes come in. I've seen them change hands. I've seen them go downhill. I've seen crime go through the roof. And these were once very expensive apartments. So yes, everything changes. You
So-
do the circle. But I think we need homes so people can afford to live here. I mean, we need businesses so they can have jobs to stay here. That, to me, is paramount.
Just keep in mind, too, we've done a lot of transition over the last couple of years with some major industries, IBM being one of the
Exactly.
biggest ones where, the numbers are down significantly. If you look at what we used to have in East Fishkill, you had 11,000 employees there, you had 10,000 in Poughkeepsie, you had
Exactly.
another 10,000 in Kingston. So a lot of that has transitioned where you're probably in the
Exactly.
6,000 or 7,000. So the county had to figure out a way to, come up with revenue and everything else. And how do you rebalance when you lose a big industry like that? And that's one of the things, that we had to go through transition. But what you're seeing also now is a lot of people from New York City after COVID moving up here
Exactly.
and buying these expensive houses, and they're helping to, outprice some of these for some of the folks that are in that middle income that can't afford it. So, you need to take all those things in consideration. The other thing I also want to say is, when you did your analysis, did you take into account all of the rental complexes? Because I think we're missing a few on your analysis. I know that you have Whitegate, the Pavilion, but we also have some big ones in Village Crest, Native Preserve. There's a bunch of other apartments in it. So I'm wondering, is that part of your analysis when you said that we're significantly short by the 10 interventions?
So what you're looking at is the rental housing survey, I think, when you're saying because we don't list any complexes in this study, because that's not what we do a thing called the rental housing survey, which is apartment complexes of 20 units or more. And we've looked at that segment of the market for 30 years. That is not what we used for this. We use census data that tells us every rent, every income, and then we matched that. So any rental, whether it's in Whitegate or anywhere, is counted in the census data.
So if nobody supplied you with information, it's not valid.
Nobody what?
If nobody supplied you with information, as an example, Whitegate or somebody, if they didn't supply you in the survey, then that could be part of the analysis
What I
that's
can tell you
missing.
is we have to rely on the census, and that is what the census data that we
I'm just
used.
wondering, because I'm looking at something here where I don't see some very big apartment complexes that are in my ward that are not part of the analysis. I'm just asking you the question, that's all.
I guess I'm confused as to what you're looking at that shows a list, because we have no list of complexes in our analysis.
Okay.
The only place I know of a list is in our rental housing survey, which is a different methodology and a different document. So we can talk about that if you'd like, if you
Yes,
call me at
please.
the office or something.
You know, judging or listening to your presentation, you just made a more point for somebody to come in with high-end housing.
Again, they're not mutually
I'm
exclusive.
just saying from a business point of view, because that's what, if you're building a complex, that's what, you're in business to make money. So you just geared it, if I'm hearing everything's at 100% rented out, I wanted to tap into that at the high end of the market. I'm just saying.
But there are people who do affordable, and that's what
Yeah,
they do.
we know
That's
that,
their
yeah.
business. So they will come to your community if they think that sort of you're receptive to it. But again, we don't have a problem with building some more high-end housing, because we think it's needed in this marketplace. And I understand IBM very well. My father was an IBMer in East Fishkill, so, and did.
I worked there too,
Did the
for 40 years,
Did the
so,
downsizing,
yeah.
in the 90s, so.
And it was sad, because a
Yeah.
lot of people did leave, because they couldn't afford to live here
It was.
after that downsizing.
Well, I mean, on behalf of the town, I can say that I'm looking at these numbers here, and obviously, for folks that are under 50,000 that are struggling to find a place, I know that we do our best to keep what we control as affordable as possible, which is a very small percentage of their annual tax bill. I mean, I know from, anyone that has a mortgage in this room knows their escrow doesn't go down.
And your taxes never go down.
And when it goes up, it's generally not because of the town of Wappinger.
Exactly.
I'll tell you that.
Glad you clarified that.
Well, it's a fact.
That's key.
But the point is, municipalities have to also do their part to manage the affordability. And when people are buying houses, often they'll go on Zillow and do the Zillow calculator and say, look, honey, we can afford this. And they're not looking at the taxes that are going to be added in
Exactly.
to the monthly, to the escrow. But that said, I appreciate your analysis, and certainly I'm going to read this even in more than I did, because I didn't even see the appendixes until now.
Yeah, and if you have any questions, please feel free. I'll do my best. Heather LaVarnway, who was the lead on this, will be back in the office on Monday, and she can even give you a deeper dive.
But, thank you
Sure.
on behalf of the board, but I do want to say that also, we have been fortunate in having, the county working with us on ways to bring jobs. We have three principal, avenues, so to speak: Route 9, 376, and also 9D to a lesser extent. I came to this area because I was trying to bring over 10,000 jobs to this area, but because of some reasons I won't discuss publicly, those jobs went upstream. But I was, here to negotiate, a state-of-the-art 5-nanometer fab out in Fishkill, but we would have benefited from those houses. That's how I got here. Why else would a guy from Taiwan, come to this area?
I've always wondered till now.
Yeah, but more seriously, I think what we're also doing, and, working closely with Ron Hicks to bring jobs to the area. Our priority, has been Route 9, to how do we do that better, including getting sewer and water. Ron's worked closely, very closely with us, Hudson Valley Lighting, but also as we're looking at water and sewer up along 376 and Al's, neighborhood, that also is intended to help bring jobs, for which then we would need more housing. As we know, Hudson
Yeah.
Valley Lighting's expanding.
Yeah,
And
and I
so
would
that's-
encourage you to talk to them, like Ron talks about the need for housing and
Right.
jobs, and talk to employers about, they know what they can get in the marketplace for their product, which means they know what they can pay, and then they know what their employees can afford. I would encourage you to talk to them,
Yeah, and the
Any-
state needs to do something about 9D, because even if you do build, it's a 2-lane highway. and they have done nothing to address that. And that's very sad. And I blame the state for that.
So, anybody in the audience have questions, for Ann? We can open up, certainly we've been dominating the discussion, but anybody out there?
And we always like to put our people on the spot.
Yeah, you did a great job.
Yeah, thank you.
You did so well.
Thanks, Ann.
I've been doing
You
this
did
for
well.
30 years.
Thank you.
I probably heard it all.
I'm sure you have.
Somebody said something the other day.
Jim, you
and
can
they're
ask
like-
a
I'm
question,
like,
but you can't
I've been
bill
doing
for
affordable
the
housing for
question.
34 years, trust me. I've heard it all.
Jim, did you have something?
No, the only question I had was, with respect to, the town of Wappinger has a lot of condominium stock.
Yeah,
A lot of it, some of it was rental housing that converted to condominium.
yeah.
How does that play into the housing needs
Right.
assessment? And then the other issue is there any trend to convert existing rental into condominiums?
No. So you guys were sort of, I was actually, we had a meeting a while ago, and we were talking about this, because I was thinking about when we were going to meet to talk about Wappingers. And you guys, there was a unique moment in time. It was 1986. There was the tax code was changed, that it was advantageous for people to take rentals and convert them into condominiums. That stopped then, so it's a very unique period of time, and you had a lot of them. And my understanding from talking to a few people here is that you are maybe struggling a little bit with some of those, but I would encourage you not to compare. So what happens with those developments is you have a lot of different little owners, right? People own 5, 10. So you don't have anybody, if you have a problem, that you can call and say, we have a problem, let's get this fixed. So I would just caution you to compare, let's say, a 60-unit condo development with 20 different owners, right, who may have not the interest of a 60-unit development that would have a single owner who has a very clear interest behind that, a large bank investment behind that. So I would just be careful about cautioning that. And there was this unique moment in time. I do not see the tax code bringing that back, so I don't think that's going to be happening.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the other problem we've seen in condominiums is actually management companies and maintaining the
It
services.
depends on which day of the
and
week the management
Right.
company.
Well, that's part of.
They change
the
every
challenge we
single
have in
6
getting
months,
Well,
it
attention.
seems.
the bigger issue is
Or
from
year.
an aging infrastructure point of
Yes,
view.
exactly.
Yeah.
Because
And
when you
probably-
have condominiums,
Right.
they're,
Yes.
But the
That's
management
what we're
companies,
seeing.
the management companies may tend to change because you have 20 different owners. None of
Yeah.
them really want to
Yeah.
pay.
Right.
And they want to hire
That's right.
the
You're
least
right.
expensive management company. I mean, I don't know your
No,
community per se. I
No,
just
but
know
you're
what they're like.
absolutely right.
I know what
That's
happens.
You are right.
It's
You are
all
right.
about money.
Right.
That's the bottom
Right.
line.
So you want people with a
Okay.
vested
But if somebody
interest.
owns 60 units, they have an investment,
Right.
not just right now in getting that rent, but in the value of that
Right.
development going forward and their ability to sell it. So they have a totally different set of interests
Mm-hmm.
aligned than the individual to sort of diffuse, sort of the tragedy of the commons, as they
Yeah.
call it, in that
Thank you.
case.
Thank you, Ann.
Great.
Yes, thank you
So-
very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate
So just
everything.
Yeah.
one quick point of clarification. When I was quoting you numbers before, that was from the Dutchess County Rental Survey in
Right.
2020.
Yeah. the
So I just want to
rent-
make sure that you knew that, and that's all.
Yeah, the rental housing survey data was not used for this, it was census data. So any apartments in Whitegate would have been picked up in the census.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you.
very
Thanks,
much.
Ann. I'd like to invite Maureen Lashley up here, from the Habitat for Humanity. And I had the fortune of a number of months ago hearing Maureen talk to the Dutchess County Supervisors and Mayors Association, and was really eye-opening because I had a certain preconception of what Habitat for the Humanity is doing, but didn't really know what they're doing here in our county. And in talking further with Maureen and having discussions, I said, wow, they do more than build houses. And of course, they do that. But, our town is facing, a number of areas, and in part because of the aging population, because of infrastructure and so forth, where a lot of our residents are having difficulty in making ends meet and also maintaining their houses and so forth. But what Maureen has discussed with us, and I want her to present as part of her overall presentation tonight, is they have a number of programs that can significantly benefit our residents. and in fact, other ways that we can work with them. And so, Maureen, the floor is open, but thank you for coming. I think it would be very eye-opening, to some of the things that you're doing, that you can work with us, and they are very interested in partnering with the town on the number of these initiatives.
Thank you, Supervisor Thurston. I appreciate it, and thank you to the members of the board as well for letting Habitat come and talk to you tonight about what we do. It could not have been more fortuitous that Ann preceded me. I've worked with Ann for as many years as we've worked in this business, and there is none better. She's amazing. You can take her work to the bank. But what I really wanted to say with respect to her presentation and to some of the questions I heard is that for Habitat, the word affordable is not attached to the house. The word affordable is attached to the individual. So, and Ann sort of mentioned it when she talked about, I forgot who she said, Jeff Bezos' house or whoever's house.
Yeah.
It was affordable to him, right?
Right.
And that's true for us too. So if I built the exact same house in the same community with the same amount of lot size, and you maybe can afford $100,000 for a $300,000 house. You may be able to afford $150,000 for that house, and you may only be able to afford $100,000. That is what Habitat uses as its affordability factor. So the house is not our issue. It's what is it that you can afford. And our affordability factor, unlike Zillow, includes taxes and your homeowner's insurance. So we are always looking at that from a very different lens than maybe we're used to when we talk about affordable housing. I swear I wasn't going to do those air quotes anymore. I hate that. So Habitat's been around since 1986. We started out as two habitats, actually. There was one in what was called the Mid-Hudson region, which was predominantly Poughkeepsie and Points North, and then there was one called Southern Dutchess, which was predominantly East Fishkill and Points South. Wappingers didn't really get too much of it, and I'm still not quite clear on that. But in 1999, it became very clear that the best thing for Dutchess County was to merge the two organizations and create Habitat for Humanity of Dutchess County. And so we did that. And things were not easy because our model doesn't make sense to anyone who has any business head. Remember I told you that that $300,000 house is being sold to the supervisor for $100,000. I think it doesn't take like a mathematician to figure out we just had a $200,000 loss. And so we have been trying to figure out how do we consistently fund that gap. In New York State, there are not a lot of opportunities to do that. We have one major statewide affordable housing program called the Affordable Housing Corporation, and that is a very small amount. It's a $30,000 gap. If you're in a more rural area, USDA does have some opportunities. There are some down payment assistance programs, but for the most part, the largest part of that program is funded by donations. And that was even getting more difficult because, as Councilwoman Bettina said, we've all lived. I'm a Beacon baby. I was born in the old Highland Hospital, so
wow.
I think I might be the oldest.
I am impressed. You look great, God bless you.
I actually taught with your brother, God rest his soul.
I was just going to say, I'm sure you knew him.
Yeah. So
Thank you.
So we have to, we have to look at what it is that what are we trying to do here? A healthy community requires a certain percentage of homeownership, a certain percentage of rentals. We need, as Ann talked about, we need those to be varying levels. We talked about it in the supervisor's office today. So if you don't have housing up here, the people who can afford it will buy down to the next level, and the next level, and the next level. And then what happens when you're at the bottom level? There just isn't anything left. And so again, let's go back to the people. I don't think about it in terms of how much do they make. What I think about it is in terms of our quality of living. How can we live in a community that doesn't have a service industry? And yet, how can we have a service industry if they can't afford to live here? I have employers that call me and say, can you build houses for home ownership for my employees so that I can get them or keep them? Home ownership is a valuable tool for every aspect of this community. And I promised the supervisor that I would talk a little bit about what happens when you already are in a home, how do you keep it, and I will get to that, but I think it's important for us to recognize that in terms of affordable housing, right now in the United States, the only large-scale entry-level housing that's being built is being built by Habitat for Humanity. So, Councilman, you said it's a no-brainer. The money is in the high-end housing. So, of course, business people are going to do it. But we need to be here to fill the gap if we want to have a community that has a quality of life that we all want and deserve. And that means making sure that the folks that help us have a better life have a place to live. We often said during the pandemic, it's really hard to shelter in place if you don't have a place to shelter. People who were couch surfing or who are living in people's basements or crowded bedrooms, their friends were afraid to let that continue during COVID, and so they were homeless. And I know we all have varying definitions of what homelessness is, but it's a very scary time when you realize that at the worst possible time in a community's life, that you don't have a place to shelter. And our phone just never stopped ringing. By the grace of God, we were able to stay open except for 8 weeks through the entire pandemic. I'll quickly go back to the donation aspect, the funding aspect of it. We weren't able to build enough houses to really make a difference when we were talking about getting donations from individuals. And so we started to look at, well, if we're telling people they need to be self-sufficient, how can we become self-sufficient? So you may know that right here in your town, we have a Restore. And if you don't know what a Restore is, I invite you to come and visit our Restore. It's home goods that are resold, and those proceeds are actually used to build a house. The very first house that we're building with the proceeds of that is happening right here in Wappingers. It's on Padgett Terrace, and it actually was dropped down on the foundation last week, and it will be ready for that homeowner by the end of July.
Congratulations, that's
Thank
great.
you very much.
That really
Thank
is.
Thank you. And that's because of the generosity of this community. Again, I've lived here, I was born here. I am always amazed that our generosity is beyond anything. I've had the fortune of always working in national organizations, and people are so jealous of the heart of this community. And that's why what I do is easy, because we have a community that believes in this. When I first came to Habitat as an employee after I'd spent some time as a volunteer, I heard about Cape Cod's habitat and what was going on there, and I thought, well, what the heck does Cape Cod need? And so that's when I learned about you have to have a service industry, right? And tourism, they're completely dependent. They literally build neighborhoods for their service industry, and they do it with the support of the businesses because the businesses understand how incredibly important that is. But the message has to come from the leadership in the community to say, if you want to live and work here, then you have to make sure that your employees have a place to live and work too. And I think we're there, and I feel really good about it. So that's what's going on. Our second house is actually going to be completed at the end of July, and that homeowner will be in August. So at any time between now and then, if you get a chance to drop over to Padgett Terrace, we'd love to have you. And the supervisor has my cell phone. If you want to give it out, that's fine, and I'll meet you down there. I'll walk you through it. It's a different project for us. We are trying modulars. We've discovered that they are significantly more energy efficient in the model that we're using, and they are also much faster and less expensive. So build more, serve more, get it done. That's what we want to do. But what else can we do to help you? And this is what the supervisor was talking about earlier. So we have repair programs, and those repair programs are for homeowners. They are not to the degree that, for instance, Rebuilding Together does, where they literally complete the entire house. There are programs for Brush with Kindness. It may be that an elderly woman just cannot get out and take care of her lawn, and so we will get her set and try to set her up with some volunteers in the community that can help her out on a regular basis. It may be a veteran who has some shrapnel still from his service-connected disability, and he can't get in his house anymore. We will build him a ramp. It may be It may be that an elderly man can't use his bathroom anymore because he doesn't have any grab bars. We will help put the grab bars in. There are just any number of things that are small enough to keep you from having a good quality and a safe quality of life that can be done, that can improve things. But I do think it's really important to say here that when a house no longer serves an individual and that individual begins to serve that house, we need to then start having conversations with our families about what should we really do here that's going to help your life be better. And we're not afraid to have those conversations. We absolutely will. And we encourage you to call us if you'd like us to come into any of those kinds of situations as well. It doesn't always work, for sure, but we do the best that we can. We also have some blight initiatives, and the one that apparently piqued a few people's interest today was our Cars for Homes. If you're not familiar with that, that's a car donation program that's run nationally by a company that works for Habitat for Humanity International. And just simply by putting down your zip code, that donation comes back to your local Habitat. Right now, with minimal effort, we get about $35,000 a year on donated cars, but blight isn't always in the form of houses that are in disrepair. Sometimes it's in the form of abandoned cars as well. And there is legislation, albeit a little difficult, that we can wrap our arms around that can help a community clean up that blight through the car donation program. So if you'd like to talk further about that, we'd love to talk to you about that as well.
So basically, what Maureen's described is if we have a situation where somebody has a parking lot full of cars on their front lawn, they can come and help remove those cars, as long as you said they have a motor in it.
You have to have a motor.
Right? But it doesn't need to be working.
Right.
Same thing with boats. They have that ability to work, with the community, and so I've expressed a strong interest in that. Barbara, attended and heard, so we have different means through Habitat, because then they have the legislative capability to go do that, whereas we may not have it. So that helps us address some of the issues we're seeing.
So just a question on what the supervisor said, because he brought up something that's near and dear to me. So the donations that you receive for cars and things, I assume you need some kind of registration they gave to you, or or if they give you permission, can you remove them from the property? Or is it something the town board,
So
or?
again, I'm going to.
I'm curious, because I have something very close to home that's got about 8 or 10 cars on it, and has 2 boats, so.
I am not an attorney. I would not pretend to be an attorney, and I know that there is due process that has to happen in order to make this possible, but it is possible, and that's what makes this really exciting. So we are going to be doing it in cooperation with another municipality this year, and I am really excited about it, as is our Cars for Home
We
program.
explore this further, Jim.
So Jim's going to take a look at that?
Yeah.
Do you have an in-house attorney or somebody that, works on these things that are?
So we do, but the lion's share of it is going to be, and he'll talk to you. And we actually, what we did with the other municipalities, actually
What
bring.
was the other municipality?
I don't think I should say, because I don't know where they're at with it. I'm
Okay.
sorry. I'll tell you
You can
after
tell
the
me
meeting.
offline.
How's that?
Tell me
I'll tell you
Or
after
we-
the meeting.
Sure.
Right. So, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought there. I told you I could do this, but apparently I can't. Where was I going with that?
Well, it's the removal of a vehicle or a boat off there and, needing to have the
Right.
attorney opinion. And, then
Right.
I think it's a matter of what is the process and procedure to do that.
Right, and it's not, I don't mean to make it sound like it will happen in one day. It will take a period of time, but I think I know that it's very doable because it has happened in other states. And I recognize New York has its own, set of regulations, and we can work through those as well. But, I know what I was going to say to you. We actually have the Cars for Homes, the company that is the Cars for Homes company, Habitat International, who has an entire department devoted to this, and then our team will all come together to meet with you to talk about our process so that you can work it into your process.
So it sounds like it's similar to Cars for Kids.
Yeah, I was just thinking of that.
We're fully transparent, that's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
But I think, one of the key things that I've been learning is that Habitat for Humanity does have a number of programs that can work with communities such as Wappinger to help improve the quality, the environment, the living conditions of the people. And I've discussed with Maureen about our Veterans and Seniors Initiative and how we're constantly looking at ways to help improve their quality of life. So it's exciting to me that Maureen is certainly very willing and happy to work with us more closely on doing this.
I don't think a lot of people know those
No,
services
no.
are available.
That's right.
Honestly, I
And they
really
ask-
don't. And
You're right, they're
getting
not, they're
that
part of
information
the,
out, it would be, is key.
so about 10 years ago, when I first came to Habitat as an employee, the national organization created this initiative called Neighborhood Revitalization, and that was the beginning of doing that kind of work. And what we were seeing at the time was that for every one house we were building that was affordable, we were losing 5
Oh,
because they
right.
were
Right.
going off they were getting sold because the homeowner couldn't keep up with them anymore.
Right.
And they were, in large part, they were being bought by investors who were then renting them. Or they were moving into more upscale household. So we knew that if we were going to keep houses affordable, that math didn't work any better than our selling model does. So we had to come up with a better plan.
Talk briefly about the transfer station program that you
Oh,
have.
sure, absolutely. So we've been working with our friends in the town of Poughkeepsie and the town of Unionvale. We actually go to the transfer station on transfer days with our huge box trucks. We have a 26 and a 20-foot box truck, and we are positioned off to the side. And when we come in, the folks at the transfer station will take a peek at what's there. They'll explain why we're there. And I would say 50% of what comes in now goes into our trucks instead of into the transfer station because they're brand new. We picked up a couch 2 weekends ago, I think was the town of Poughkeepsie, that still had the plastic wrap around it. So and my favorite story, and I hope they're not listening, but my favorite story is we had it had to have been $50,000 worth of Omega kitchen cabinets donated. And I said to the man who turned out to be the husband, I said, "Why are you doing this?" He said, "Oh, they were the wrong shade of white." Okay. So,
Lucky for us.
Again, there's a need for housing and there's a need for housing. So, and sometimes we get to use cabinets in the house that we're building to keep our costs down, and sometimes we sell it because we can then do 5 houses with that sale. So a lot of really good things are happening there. I also wanted, when you think of a not-for-profit, you usually think of us with our hands out, and we are, and we should be, and that's the way it is. But I also wanted to know that every year in Dutchess County, we bring, I believe, I'm looking for my numbers, we bring about $150,000 in property tax. We bring about $200,000 in sales tax. We have 18 living wage jobs. And all of our jobs come with 100% health care. Not too many people can say that anymore. And we are generating almost $1 million in wages every year. So while we are definitely here asking for your help, we are also letting you know that we're trying to bear our burden as well.
And also have been increasing their volunteer as well as intern program. We've discussed of course, working with the schools. They do have a program of BOCES, but looking to help young folks learn some trades and use them as long as they're not in the vicinity of power tools, but to help train. So again, it's something that we can be looking at as far as our town working more closely in partnership with the
I told the
Habitat.
supervisor earlier today, and some of your department heads as well, that we were the recipient, every year when the Rockefeller Christmas tree comes down after the season, that is milled and donated to a Habitat for Humanity for use. And last year we were chosen. And they're not good for really anything in terms of supporting wood or anything like that. When I talk like that, you probably are saying, why is she in construction? But I have a really great guy that does all that stuff. But what we came up with was, for every Habitat homeowner, we actually built a planter box that they have on their front porch. Because I believe that every house should have a front porch. I think that's what makes a neighborhood. I think that's what makes a community. And since I've been here, every one of our houses have a front porch. So that would be my claim to fame. It was just such a great project because these kids from BOCES, it was amazing to me what they were able to learn from building a planter box, angles and miters and all kinds of things that, their professor was struggling to figure out how he was going to make sure they had real applicable work. So now we're talking to them because of that project about building panels so that the panels can come to the job site and have volunteers
nice.
and subcontractors put it together.
Very nice.
Right?
That is a win-win.
So it's a
It really
great
is.
program, it's a great organization. I strongly recommend that you come over to the Restore and take a look at what's happening there.
And where's that located?
That
For
is.
public too, that's
Sure,
listening?
absolutely. It's 1822 South Road in the 9 Mall Plaza. You'll know that Aldi's and Caldor's is there.
Cool.
See, I told you I was old.
Cool.
Aldi's and Kohl's is there.
The old ShopRite building.
Yeah.
Really going back.
Yeah, so we're in what used to be Babies R Us. So
Okay.
30,000 square feet of some of the most amazing things you will ever see. And if you really are into it, we also have an online auction once a month.
Yes,
So if
you
you go to
do.
our website, you can find some really, really cool stuff.
So, I think that, Maureen,
It
the
is
more
nice.
information you can get us, and we do have a very active, website and social media. and
Put it
Joey
out there,
helps
yeah.
with that. I think, Joey, to help, put that, together, so that we can get more of this information, especially in these various areas that go beyond what most people think is Habitat for
Absolutely.
Humanity.
Definitely the senior center too. I mean,
Well,
I'm
I
not
was-
sure
Yeah,
if you,
Jessica, I attended a meeting, I had a staff meeting
So-
with.
but
folks.
give
We actually have
presentations
some of
there
your
and
seniors
stuff would
from
be
the senior
good.
center
Good,
who volunteer for us. One of them is even on the construction site, so,
very good.
yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
questions from the public that would like to ask Maureen something? If not, thank you so
Great
very
job,
much.
seriously, really, thank you.
Maureen, let me just say one thing. We heard from Ann and, the programs that the federal government and the local and state government can provide from a housing perspective there. But government can't do it all. And
Thank
it's
you.
organizations such
Thank
as
you.
yours that really meet that gap that exists. And the work that you do, tangible work that you do and your volunteers and staff do is really priceless to any community. So thank you for everything.
And I'll put that right back on you, and I'll say that we can't do what we do without you. Your advocacy at the government level of making sure that housing dollars are prioritized. We're sitting on some great money right now in Albany, and earmarking that for housing, and obviously I would like to see earmarked for home ownership, is
Sure.
critical. It's absolutely critical.
And thank you for staying in the community and not leaving.
Yes, yeah.
Seriously, and
I
being
did
a
have a little
beaconite.
I had a
Beacon
little
night.
7-year respite. I moved to St. Petersburg, Florida, but I'm
But you came back.
You moved
That's what's
from Florida
important.
to New York. That's an interesting one.
Well, I was in college.
It was a couple of years ago.
Well,
No.
June, according to your website, is National Home Ownership Month, so I'm glad we got both of these
Thank you,
presentations in
seriously.
tonight.
And I'm glad
and-
you met my brother. during
Thank you
the
again.
summer. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. No, I think, the board, as we look at some of our initiatives, including even in budget season, where we can, work with and help support something like Habitat,
Sure.
is very
Yeah.
meaningful, for
Certainly.
us. So I think that this is something that is, I think, what
Oh, it's needed.
distinguishes Wappinger as well from many other communities, so. it's
Agreed.
Why I think, we're having presentations like this to learn more about how we can better help the community. So thanks for all your support. Next item on the agenda is the opening of the continued public hearing for resolution introducing local law of 2022, which would amend Chapter 240 zoning of the town code with respect to the shopping center district and large-scale mixed use. So do I have a motion to reopen that?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays or abstentions? Seeing none, the motion passed. We have, it won't be, resolved tonight, but I think it's an opportunity for further, comments from the board, from the audience. I see that we have our planner and also the attorney representing the applicant. So I open it up to the floor or to the board if any questions. Bill, you had mentioned to me you might have a question or a comment, so we can start with you, go down, or
I appreciate the ongoing information that has been shared. Malcolm had shared some information with regard to the input that we had received. I believe it was from Dutchess County on the county comments. So thank you for your analysis on that. Obviously, this project is a unique opportunity, in my opinion, to take a look at how we can further expand opportunities in this particular zone, and at the same time, be cognizant of other parcels that remain within this same zone. I thought this evening the presentations were very informative. I'm going to continue my research on what was provided tonight and how we can apply that toward the overall scope of what is being proposed. It's a lot of information that was provided tonight, but I think that we're doing our due diligence here as a town to continue and look at the pros and cons of an innovative approach within the shopping center zone. Thank you.
any other comments?
I think
Questions?
it's important that we include upscale apartments then, based on the commentation, the recommendations that were given to us tonight. I'd like to see that included. I haven't seen that.
Do you think it would benefit the board to have a workshop on this?
Yes.
I'm not sure if timing allows that, they have some urgency in getting this addressed, we have a public hearing tonight, so if there are some questions, let's get them out there, at least they could answer it and reply.
So I think one of the things I'd like to see is I'd like to see a more defined plan of what they propose. I mean, we keep seeing these 50,000-foot, assessments. I know we talked to the planner a little bit. He's got some ideas on some of the things we could possibly do, but there's a lot of, different lots. There's 6 different lots here, and I'd like to see, what we're going to do. This is something I asked for 2 weeks ago. Again, we did meet with the planner, gave us some good ideas, some good feedback, but again, it's not real specific, and I don't know exactly what the developers are planning on doing. And I like to be able to see that before I go ahead and change any kind of code here. So I don't know if workshop is the right thing, but, it's something that maybe we take a look at and just get everybody on, one last page here and get the residents, speak up then or forever hold your peace. But let's give people an opportunity, but let them come in with a little more defined plan.
I agree. More information isn't going to hurt anybody. I think it's very beneficial.
Well, as I understand it, Councilman, the plan has been defined about as much as you can define it at
Excuse
this
me.
point in time. I think they provided us with a plan, and I'm not trying to justify it, but from what I've seen and what I've heard during the 3 or 4 meetings that we've had here publicly, they laid out the plot plan, which you have.
I have it
on
in
there,
front of me.
right?
Yeah.
Which you have in front, and the first stage of it is, in order to, I think, stabilize that area, they propose housing. And then in order to get the other areas attracted for potential development, they need to have the housing element up there. And I think the housing that they've been proposing is the more, up-end, housing rather than the low-end, particular housing. But as I understand it, and I mean, Malcolm, you can, clarify, but they've been pretty clear, with respect to that they're unable to give us a detailed plan at this point in time until, they get, the ability to go market the place and see what people can do. Otherwise, we're facing, a parking lot that could go under any day now.
But you would think that when they purchased the property, right, they would have some kind of idea of what they wanted to put in there, right?
They
So
do,
they're not-
which is there.
I got the picture,
Which
and
is
I understand the housing piece of it, but if you look at Lot 2 or Lot 4, I mean, what are they proposing there? Are they proposing warehousing in the back of Lot 2? What are they proposing in Lot 4? I mean, Lot 6, they're not going to put what they were originally talking about, right, which was a potential hotel there, so.
No, they may, that's not ruled out. I think with respect to the warehousing, they don't, what they've said, at least publicly, and we can go back to the record, is that they don't want to put in warehousing, at all.
Who were
for
the
that.
who were the two potential people they had coming into, they said they couldn't disclose because they weren't the right fit? Who were they? Are they going to put like a bounce? They're going to put a restaurant in there? What are they going to put in there? I guess I'm trying to figure out.
Right. Well, they don't know right now. It's based on how they can market that place. I think what they don't want to do, from what I hear, is they don't want to, and they can't, do anything with respect to the box stores. Those are the two over in that lot, that, are no longer, rentable as that type of store. In order to go and develop that place, they have proposed looking at in the back portion of it some different alternate uses, such as, a brewery, that provides, custom draft ale. At the front store, they have presented what was based, I think, as a result of my and other
So we're not-
interest is an Eastdale type concept. That's what I
That's
think
what they
they're
originally.
committed to.
That's what they originally said, and
That's what they still say.
I've seen nothing that looks even remotely close to Eastdale.
No, we have the drawing. We have the conceptuals, Al.
I think one of the problems, just from, when we talk about a village within a village, whatever you want to call it, the apartments are so far out, it's not, it's just a big complex, right? So my concern is, when we talked about Eastdale, or whatever you want to call it, it would also be driven by the housing, right?
Yeah.
If you, and you can call it whatever you want, and Bill was very eloquent, low-income house, whatever you call it, market rate housing, is going to be that would determine what your commercial buildings is. It's just a matter of sense.
Right, but there's a big difference between low-income housing
I
and
get
market
that.
rate housing.
That's
So
why I would like to have a
Malcolm,
little bit.
perhaps Malcolm can, are you able to be more specific on what model they're looking at? My understanding is this is market rate.
Right, exactly.
So from what I understand, they're expecting their rents to be about $2,000 a month, give or take, as the market dictates. And given the definition of low-income housing that we just received, that would not be low-income housing. That would fall somewhere in the middle of the spectrum because,
Right.
$2,000 a month times 12, that's $24,000 a year. That's almost 50% of a $50,000 income household, which is the upper end of low-income housing. So this would this would go a long way to padding the rental housing stock in the town, which would have ripple effects down the line, right? Because now those people who can afford those apartments are not snatching up
Right.
the more affordable housing. So there would be positive ripple effects in terms of low-income housing in the town, but they're not proposing low-income housing.
I just, when you look at the complex, they have to have some idea what they want to do with, Lot 2 is obviously propose the next phase, right? Give me an idea of what you're going to do. They painted the picture the first time, and every week it's been a step back. It has been, and the last meeting, we even said, we need to put housing in. So, that's what they got. They got
So-
possible housing, right?
What I would like to see there is something like an Eastdale situation in which you've got housing above retail. The situation of the site is such that they have a certain amount of infrastructure currently developed. They would like to use that infrastructure
Right.
for the rest of its lifetime. So in the short term, what they would like to do is they would like to break those box stores up into several small retail spaces in the front, and then have other uses in the back, whether it be warehousing or light manufacturing or self-storage, brewing or distilling, things that have a lower parking demand and would make good use of that space and the infrastructure in the back, which is, trucks can get back there, they've got loading docks, there are things that can make good use of that type of infrastructure. There are uses that can make use of that infrastructure. But what that would also do is that would dramatically reduce the parking calculation for the site, for Site 2. And what they would like to do, if they can reduce that parking demand, is redevelop some of that parking area into a central green, and make a park-like area in the center.
I agree, 100%. Take the out, just commit to it. I want some kind of commitment to something, because they're just asking us to put apartments in. That's what it comes down to.
I disagree.
Yeah,
I think that the town, it's not the town's role to micromanage the occupancies. Our role is to manage the uses, right? So from their perspective, subdivided retail at the front, which is 39,000 square feet, 60 feet deep, I get that. Storage and light commercial on the rear, which I understand where you're coming from with the vagueness, but I think that's by design because they don't know specifically how they.
I've got zero problem with that.
Okay.
And that's what they've committed.
That's what I'm looking at here, and then the flex retail office on the northeast or eastern side there, I get that. The new design that is been presented to us involves the green out front, which
Right.
I'm not against. And then the retail pads, which I'm not sure what retail pads are, maybe Malcolm?
They would be, what they would like to do is, they would essentially be the same small retail spaces along the front, but you would build them out in that central green around the pedestrian spaces. So it would be additional small-scale retail spaces.
And they've done this before.
Yes.
Well, I mean, and to Councilwoman Bettina's credit, in a perfect world, we'd love to see the housing on the second floor above the retail, but the construction and engineering of this particular existing building, from what I understand, doesn't allow anything on the second story,
They
right?
would not be able to build that with the building as is,
Right.
but because
But they
it is in the
could
best interest
Right.
of the town, what we've done is we've written the zoning so that in the future, it would allow for that. They wouldn't need to
Okay.
come back and modify the zoning. They could come back to the planning board and say, hey, we would
Right.
like to, propose this demolition plan and redevelopment plan in line with an Eastdale concept.
Okay.
But that would be in the future. They're not expecting to do that in the short term.
Right, and with respect to the housing that's in phase, or in sub-district 5 here, I mean, I personally believe that moving forward, and I've said this before, the existing shopping center uses and zoning are not going to work. I think that we do need to explore making an innovative change here to incorporate housing into these multi-use shopping center, this particular multi-use shopping center zone. The restaurant, which is a freestanding restaurant that would be located, they say Hilltop Restaurant because that's probably on the top, the asphalt that's never been used in 30 years.
That higher area
Up on
the
top,
side.
yeah. I think that that is a good approach. And then I'm not too concerned about number 6 at this point. I know that there have been some mentions about that. I think, we can't put the cart before the horse on that. What I do have some concern with is the discussion that had happened previously involving the DOT, where there had been some discussion about a secondary connection. I think we need to have conversations about how that's going to work, because the last thing we need to be doing is putting more cars on Old Hopewell Road. And I'm sure everyone in this room can agree that that stacks up from 9 on Old Hopewell already. And it seems, very bizarre to me that the state DOT that approved the multi-lane entrance and exit when this thing was constructed with a controlled intersection is now requiring or recommending another road to go out to a county road. That to me is something that we need to have conversations about, whether we restrict the use to the residents only, or whether, something like that to limit the number of cars that are using that if it's needed. I mean, ideally, I would not want to see that. Ideally, I'd want to see all the traffic using the existing entrance and exit, right? But if it comes down to requiring that, I certainly would want to have conversations about restricting the flow so that we don't have retail shoppers from BJ's cutting out to Old Hopewell Road to get around 2 traffic lights. That's irresponsible and that's a nightmare.
I agree with you. I know that the applicant has been in conversations with the New York State DOT on that matter. They are also exploring the easement that they possess that would make that a possibility. I haven't gotten an update from the applicant, but ultimately that will be a site plan issue. If they
Right.
come in and they want to build multifamily housing, and the DOT will not let them unless they set this secondary entrance up, that would be handled at site plan. They would need to resolve that with DOT, and that may be, that may turn into additional traffic mitigation measures at the signalized intersection that already exists.
But I
to
do
lock
agree
box
with
or-
the councilman that, the easement that they have runs right behind the Gulf Station, and that is just
Right.
way too close, to
It
the
seems
intersection.
too close to the intersection to be
Well,
functional.
I mean, I just
to
come
function
into
well,
this
yeah.
meeting tonight,
It's too
I
close.
was backed up.
It's
you
too
know.
close, and I'll tell you this, I was out on Saturday night or Friday night driving around because I couldn't sleep because of the cars racing up and down Route 9, which is just unbelievable. I don't know what is going on at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night with cars racing. So I said, let me go see where all these cars are. They're all up at Alpine Commons. I'm not kidding you when I tell you this. There were over 100 cars. I went all the way to the top. Over 100 cars doing burnouts up and down the strip in front of the old Stop and Shop, out to Route 9, up and down Route 9. I spoke to the state police, and they're aware of the situation. But this particular property has more cars going there on a Saturday night during 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. than they would have using the entire apartment complex. And they seem to be able to function on that controlled intersection just fine. So it's crazy to me that, we're having a conversation about creating a new road to go over to Old Hopewell Road. That just does not make sense to me. That said, the project that we have before us, I think, is an interesting and innovative approach that we need to entertain. That's my opinion. The property right now is being misused. It's, and Barbara, if you drive around the rear, there are people dumping all sorts of stuff, I'm sure. Okay, so, okay, I mean, it's clearly an example of a property that's not being used, that's being misused. And, right now, we have a unique opportunity, in my opinion. I've said this before. We have investors that are being proactive here, discussing different options with the town. I personally believe we need to entertain this shopping center and large-scale mixed-use project and any of the necessary text amendments or zone changes to facilitate this project, because if we do not capitalize on this opportunity, I don't believe it's going to exist much longer based on what we're seeing in the markets right now.
I don't think anybody's debating on whether we need to do redevelopment, because we certainly do up there. There's no doubt about that. It's just a question of what do you put in there? What makes the most sense to do? And I think that's the only question, because again, we've seen some of the things they're looking to do, but I'd like to have a clearer picture of what they want to put in, that's all.
The only issue with that, Councilman, is that through conversations with them, they have been trying to explore new tenants, but if that tenant is of a use that is not currently permitted in the SC zone, they can't get anywhere in those conversations, and they can't get commitments
So
from
who are
those
the
tenants.
can you say who the two potential, or at least what business they're in, so that we know that, is it a bounce, is it a restaurant? What is something that's not allowed there today that potentially would go in there that they're looking at, other than warehousing and storage?
So those two, as we've discussed, there's also the brewing, microbreweries and microdistilleries, light manufacturing and the retail sale of whatever you've manufactured there at a small scale, veterinarian offices. Am I forgetting any, Jim?
No, I think
It's not a very long list. It's,
right. I mean, there was other uses that were contemplated that
That
were
we
mostly
mixed,
automobile-related,
Right.
but, we didn't think that that was suitable for the site.
yeah.
But, those are the uses. I believe indoor recreation is permitted.
Already permitted as a special permit, yeah.
Yeah, so bars, restaurants, breweries, offices, health offices, things like
Breweries
that are all
not
permitted.
Yeah,
Breweries,
would not be
breweries.
Brewers are committed, not breweries. That's
Right,
part of
it's
code.
Basically a micro brewer.
Yeah, okay, so
a brew
clarification,
pub.
but
A
point of the
brew
matter
pub
is,
is
they're all the
permitted,
kind
but
of
a
business that
brewery
are
is
allowed
not.
there, so why wouldn't we try to put something that's already allowed in there, rather than have to, re-droll everything for, SC to a special use permit.
Well-
If I can get something in there, and I understand maybe with the apartments, things like that, you might have to make some different configurations, but why can't we put something in there that's basically already zoned for the,
So, just for the history, Diamond Properties bought this property at foreclosure. The prior owners could not pay the debt on the property, and it went to foreclosure. And Diamond Properties bought it at foreclosure, substantially under what it was
assessed?
considered to be the fair market value.
All right.
So basically, the uses that were permitted there
Didn't work.
didn't work, which is the reason why Diamond Properties now is coming to look for different changes. They did the same thing in Mount Kisco to, more industrial properties and changed them into, more retail and commercial uses rather than industrial. But that's what they do. They take distressed properties and work them into, other things. But again, part of taking distressed properties is looking to see, what may go there. And, one of the challenges from this property, which has been, stated by, some real estate people, is that it's not visible from Route 9. So it is not the most desirable retail space because of the visibility. And one of the reasons for the multifamily housing is to get foot traffic up on the site, which, would enhance some of the, the.
So
the
is
retail
warehousing and
desire.
storage the main thing they're trying to put up there in addition to the housing? Is that the bottom line?
From what I understand, those are the last things that they
Yeah.
would like to add. What they're looking to put in there is destinations. They want a reason to bring people up there, and so that's going to be indoor recreational, that's going to be a distiller or a microbrewer, that's going to be a restaurant, it's going to be a veterinarian office, right? That's something that you need to go to, something not that you see as you drive by and you drive up, but something that you know is there and you have a reason to go to. That's
So
what
how do
they're
you
hoping
ensure
to
if you
do.
change the code, that's what they're going to do? And that's what, if you change the code, which opens it up, right, to everything, how do you ensure that what we're saying we're comfortable with, that's what they're going to build, and not just do warehousing, because it's opened up to everything. So what's the guarantee there?
Well, as it was previously before you, there is no guarantee and there's no cap, but we can explore caps or ways in which we can prevent a full redevelopment of warehouse or self-storage.
So you
Again,
can cap it at 10%, 15% warehousing for,
I think 10% or 50% is a little
I'm
low.
just making
but
numbers up, but I'm saying you can cap
whatever
it.
that number wants to be, whatever we decide that number makes the most sense as, we can set that.
So the other day, we talked about lot number 2, potentially putting warehousing behind that, but putting storefronts in the front. So you could cap it at something like that?
Yeah,
You could put a specific language?
we
Yeah,
can put
I
in
agree
a
with that.
specific percentage,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So this way, the warehousing doesn't overtake the front.
Yes.
Right, I see what you're saying, so I agree with that. Right now, just understand that the biggest Dollar General in Dutchess County could open right there, right now. Right, right now, based on the existing use,
Yeah.
we could get something we don't want, okay? No offense to Dollar General, but if you look at the demographics for Dollar General locations, you'll know why I'm saying that, okay? And you look at other issues that happen around Dollar Generals, you'll see why I'm saying that. We are in a unique position where we can create a formula, which I think you're alluding to here, based on that number 2 site. No more than that particular building, no more than X percentage of that building can be utilized for, say, hypothetically, for storage at the rear, okay? Our vision is retail at the front, which is what I'm seeing here on this latest conceptual, okay? I agree with that. Stipulating that is possible, if we can stipulate that, so that X percentage is retail on the east side of the building, and X percentage is, no more than X percentage is storage at the rear of the building. This way, we are able to define what that particular building's intent is. I think that's a good thing to do. Just as the same approach that I think was used previously, where you said, okay, we want to have a green space at the front of the building. We want to have retail,
Right.
freestanding retail at the front of the building between the green space and the other retail to kind of create a commons type feel to it.
Talking about lot two?
This is all a lot too.
Okay.
I think the advantage of, I'm not a big fan of warehousing or storage, but I think the advantage that Malcolm pointed out is it doesn't require a lot of parking. That way you can maximize the green space at the front, and you can only need 128 spots, whatever it comes out to be here, rather than having larger square footage requiring more spaces like a Stop and Shop.
So there are 4 uses that were contemplated for the rear of the building. 2 of them we've got some concerns with in terms of overtaking the site, and that's self-storage and warehouse. The other 2 would have similarly low parking demands, and I don't think that we would need to put a percentage cap on them. And that's the distillers, microbrewers, and the light industrial and manufacturing sale of. But yes, absolutely. And ultimately, we want to have the majority, particularly the rear of that building, dedicated to those uses so that we can lower that parking demand and we can maximize as much of the front of the site into a green without causing problems at the planning board in terms of parking calculations.
Right.
So you could put in a caveat like X number of COs based on this development on 2.
I think based on the percentage of the building square footage, correct me if I'm wrong, Malcolm, you can say max, no more than X percentage of the building can be used for storage warehouse.
Right.
Well, I was talking about you get X number of COs done based on, for the apartments, based on what you do in lot number 2.
I don't know how that, I don't know
You
how
could
that
do
works.
that.
We could
You
do that.
could do that, you could do that for a
But Gypsy
percentage.
just
I don't
said,
think you
in
can
the
do
psych
that.
center,
Yeah,
like
it
Bill
It gets
said.
complicated. What
They-
Jim and
they
I
said-
discussed as, I think, a better alternative to that would be, as part of the special permit, which they would have to then come back before the town board to receive. When they come back and they create those sub-districts, what they would have to give you at that time would be something called a circulation and pedestrian plan. And that would lay out some of the site improvements that they're hoping to make as a part of that first phase. And that way, we've had them as an applicant commit to this conceptual design and the site improvements, which I think would dramatically improve the conditions on Lot 2. It would also eliminate the problems of, drag racing in front of those empty buildings, regardless of whether or not they're empty. If we put in these site improvements, suddenly that parking lot is not a place where you can race cars around. But I think that is the better way to proceed rather than capping COs. I think if we want to have them commit to site improvements, that we would have that as what we would call a pedestrian and circulation.
The biggest problem with capping the COs would be, I think you would really inhibit the ability of the developer of Lot 5 to get financing. Because the financing for Lot 5 would then be contingent upon a separate project. And I think it would be very difficult to get anybody to lend money to do that. That's the biggest downside.
My interest is what they're gonna do with the number 2. That's what I'm thinking.
Well, I mean, at this point in time, frankly,
I get
putting anything in it is better than what's there now. So,
No, but we want to control what goes in, not just put
Yeah.
anything in there. We want to control it. I'd rather have more retail
Again,
than warehousing in there. I don't want to have all warehousing and storage.
I don't want it to be like the South Hills Mall. I don't want it to be like where JCPenney used to be. They're larger scale, but I don't want to see those stores empty. Again, even if they get all these improvements, if we get the zoning
I mean,
change.
you're not gonna be
You don't
able-
know, nobody knows the future, but at the same time, we need to have some understanding of what the town wants and needs.
But again, what the town can only do is, a town can only control the permitted uses and setbacks and bulk, tables and things like that. You're not going to be able to mandate a property owner to occupy a building. I mean, it's not.
No, but I
it's
think
not
what we're doing is
possible.
you're looking at restricting, as an example, warehousing and storage that goes on the property. So in that
Well,
respect,
no, and that's certainly fair. I mean,
Yeah,
and
I
that
think
was,
that's a good approach.
that development is fine, but you're not going to be able to put in your zoning that this must be occupied. I mean, you can't mandate a property owner to fill a space with a tenant because, you know, they're not.
No, but we
One,
can
I think
suggest
is
stuff that's
probably
already, but we can suggest things that are already in the code they can fill it with. There's certain retail
Right.
stores that are available in the code today they can put in there.
Right,
Right, and they're
So
not
I-
there.
but they could try to put them there.
Well, not
They've
really.
been
trying.
No, not really. I
They
mean,
couldn't get
we
any
got to
interest.
understand,
I
we're,
think
you know,
they've been trying for
at,
3
at-
years.
at the end of the day, we're at the mercy of the market, okay?
That's right.
The market is not looking that good
No.
moving forward. We have an opportunity right now where this particular applicant wants to build the housing to feed this project, okay? I agree with that approach. I also agree with Councilman Casella's analysis, which is to maximize, set a cap on the percentage of square footage to be used for a specific use, and to stipulate that that would be in the rear.
Agreed.
Okay? Because that would basically stipulate that the retail would be at the front, which is what we want to see from an aesthetic perspective, right? So, from a town perspective, I think that's the approach. I'm not so sure we have any ability to further mandate what specific occupancy could be in each one of those uses. I can tell you right now, though, that it's been at least 2 years of nothing, with the exception of the Salvation Army, which was the last one to move out. AC Moore, I think it's been over 2 years. I think that was pre-COVID when they
The
exited.
very beginning of COVID.
And, you know, this is going to become a derelict property. It already is becoming a derelict property, and that's not fair to BJ's, okay, because we cannot afford to lose BJ's. That said, I think exploring these options and looking at how we can navigate the ship a little bit here to make sure that we're getting what we're seeing here, I think that's a good approach. But at the same time, I don't want to delay, especially looking at this economy right now, I don't want to delay investors that are willing to take on the risk of this entire parcel.
That's right.
To Councilman Beal's point, I mean, one of the things that is a concern in this market is, you know, the retail uses that were in there, the AC Moores of the world, shopping centers, you know, because of online, you know, Amazon and online
course.
shopping, you know, it's hurt that level of retail. You know, also, if you look, you know, locally, a lot of restaurants have closed.
And a lot more will.
Right.
I think
So-
I think the biggest problem from the applicant's perspective in terms of getting tenants in there is that they would love to have retailers along the front, but the only retailers that they're finding that are interested are looking at much, much smaller square footages. They can't find anybody who wants to take over all of one of those 2 vacant buildings.
No, but
And they would come in and they would break up the building and they'd rent out the front, but then they've got the majority of the building in the back that's not being used. And so that's one of the big asks. The uses that we're looking to add to the shopping center district are primarily these uses that would make good use of large empty space, of the truck access and of the, you know, the loading docks in the rear, that would not be retail dependent. And then you've got a situation where they can break up the building, they can rent out the front, and they are not saddled with a situation where the majority of the building is still vacant. Because that's the situation they're in right now. And so we are looking at retail uses that could be added to the front, but primarily the uses that we're looking to add would go in the back.
So can I ask you a question? You keep
Yeah.
saying we. Who's we?
We, the town, I suppose I'm speaking as
Well,
far as
that
the
may
best
not,
interest
that
of
may
the
not be
town.
everybody's vision, the we vision you're talking about.
Sure.
I think that's a lot more of your vision, not necessarily my vision. And the town board will make that final decision. So, again, I'm more interested in making sure, so I'm okay with thinking about, like as an example, the AC Moore building, Stop and Shop, putting maybe storage or something in the back. We were talking about for retail, making the front, breaking it up into different components, like we talked about, right? Different little retail stores, because you can't get the big box stores, and I get that. that seems to be a fair concept. And again, I want to keep it more retail than, I don't want to go to the, and it seems like our attorney there is trying to get us to go more towards industry manufacturing, and that's not the direction I want to go in, Jim.
No, I'm just saying that, my personal opinion, again, this is my personal opinion, is that retail, traditional retail is not doing well because of online shopping. And, the larger, particularly larger spaces are not doing well.
But these are going to be smaller spaces that we just talked about. They're not
Well,
going to be the large
Jim,
spaces.
you bring up a very good point. Retail, Macy's, all of the large stores are not, but they are turning their businesses around, where you could do a lot more online than ever before. And I have seen malls that have had shopping centers in them, and now there are little boutiques that are in there. I mean, you could go on the Cape, you see that. If you go up to, Lake George, you see that. All those huge stores, those box stores that they have made little boutiques in. And all the stores do online. And it doesn't take rezoning to do that.
But that's because those locations are largely destination locations. We
Some of
not-
them are,
No,
some-
most of them are.
No,
'cause-
I
yeah,
disagree
No,
with
I
you.
disagree because
Well,
I have a friend that's
I
dealing
shop
with
a
these
lot.
things. Well, yeah, but you're not shopping in all those locations.
I
We're no
have.
destination. We're
No.
not a destination spot. That's what they're trying to convert this into, is a destination spot, to try to get some of those boutiques in here. That's exactly what they're trying to do.
A lot of the stores do their shopping, a lot of the people do their shopping online. They
So
want to
we know
see the
that-
product, and then they'll go online and buy it.
We know the Stop and Shop building is basically, it's a problem building, right? So you
Yeah.
can't go up, it's not load bearing. So with the high ceilings, you're gonna, microbrewery is perfect, a small assembly, like you said, a small, an arc or something like that is perfect for that. Even, like we said, a small self-storage. It'd be interesting to see what kind of numbers are needed to make, we keep saying, we'll limit the size, the scope of it, but nobody can tell you, you need somebody from that industry to tell you, you need 100 units to make it financially feasible. So that would be interesting to know, because then you know how many square feet you need to go,
I
right?
mean, personally, I don't think warehouse, either self-storage.
That's difficult.
Or warehouse would work in this space. I think it's way too
I don't think so either.
I mean, if you look at Amazon's warehouse, it's, over
No.
100.
Right, and in fact, what's
200,000.
happening
I mean,
is these type of properties are being bought up in order to create a massive warehouse in the center of the property.
right.
That's what you're
Right.
talking about,
Distribution
and that
center.
would be
Well, I mean, that's
the main
exactly
thing
what
that
happened
would happen here.
in the old Duchess Mall.
Right.
Right.
That's what's
where
happening,
Service
yeah.
merchandise
That's what's
is, and again, they've got access to 84, which is why, you're seeing,
Right.
and again, 84 is from a trucking route,
Right.
bypasses the traffic in New York City, so,
Right.
I mean, that's why that's such an attractive, thing there, but this is not, I mean, those buildings are huge.
Right.
Compared to this,
So-
this is not.
I know.
I
So-
mean, I think the most likely thing you'd see would be some sort of light industry, maybe, some sort of machine shop or, something that needs, higher ceilings with, and again, maybe, maybe it won't work because of, I was thinking of overhead cranes, but probably don't have the structure for it.
Is it fair, Councilman Cassell, is it fair to say, based on this latest conceptual, that, right now, in this latest conceptual, there's 50,000 square feet defined for storage and light commercial rear-loaded, and it has 39,000 square feet as of subdividable retail at the front of the building, and then the 11,000 flex retail office on the far side of the building. Is it fair to say that that would be a fair number to cap? Are you looking at the same document I am?
No, I'm not.
We don't have
We don't have that.
All right, this is the email that was most recently sent from Malcolm that indicates the square footage per section. It has 50,000 square feet for storage and light commercial, 39,000 square feet for subdividable retail, that's 60 foot deep off the front, 11,000 square feet flex retail office, and then separate and distinct from that building, those retail pads are at 4,500 square feet
Right.
each. And, based on your discussion earlier, my question to you would be, and you may not be able to answer this right now because you don't have it in front of you, but, or maybe Malcolm, you can answer this. If we were to stipulate no more than 50,000 square feet of space would be designated for storage and light commercial within this building, and that would be on the north side of the building only, where the loading docks currently exist, is that something that we can stipulate within this?
I would avoid using the square footage. Instead, I would look at what percentage of the
Percentage of
total
building.
that is, and then cap the FAR at whatever that percentage becomes.
Okay.
That's how I would do that. As for, I would avoid using words like north side of the building.
Okay, whatever you
But I
you
would
would
say,
use.
you know, we can say, you know, it should not be adjacent to the pedestrian-focused.
Right, so
elements
from
of
a
the site.
planning
Yeah.
perspective,
We can do that.
identifying the viewscape, which clearly would be, the green has to face the retail, not the storage. Plus, the existing loading docks are already there on the storage side. I'm just trying to find a level of consensus here, because I believe that each member here has valid points. And I've been here for 16 years, and we've never gotten into the very specific, we never had an opportunity like this, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, this
Yeah,
is
we have
unique.
not. This is a unique
This is
opportunity. So
a big- yeah.
I want to, if we can capitalize off of what my colleagues are saying here and create a vision that we all can share, I think that would be a good thing.
It'd be nice to be able to see
I think
some
it
of
would be a
these
benefit. I do. I think
proposals.
that
Let's see what they
information
look
would be
like. I
good.
mean, it just,
Yeah.
Yeah, and just so you're aware, on here, he does have a streetscape.
Yeah.
Going out to Old Hopewell.
No, he has like a, looks like almost like a Woodbury
Within the
Commons.
interior.
Oh, within
So
the
that, yeah,
side?
there were two site plans, or two conceptual site plans. One of them has the square footage and parking calculation breakdown that Councilman Beal was just quoting, and the other one has conceptual photographs of similar sites developed in a similar way. You know, obviously, that's not what this is going to look like. It's not an architectural review, but it is an example of what.
it actually looks nice. I'm looking at something here. I
Yeah, the
think you
small
sent
box
that.
retail freestanding things.
The
they
one
look
off to the
good.
right,
They look
yeah.
good.
And that's been
It's hard to see.
there all along, you know, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of work has occurred here, day to day, and a lot of back and forth, which I appreciate. Malcolm looped me in on all this, this week, and I appreciate that. These photos are really good. So where do we go from here if we can reach consensus?
Well, I think we need a commitment from the developer to say, what are you willing to do? You've heard it, I don't know if they're in the audience or not, I see Neil's in the back, but what is the developer willing to commit to help us, you know, make this thing work, if we can?
Why doesn't he come in and talk to us? No, the developer. No, but we could come at another meeting.
Let's keep moving forward.
No, Neil, why can't the developer come and talk to us?
Because they've been here
They-
5 other
yeah,
meetings.
they've
In
been
our
here and
meeting.
talked to us.
Yeah,
Yes,
they've been
they've been
here
here.
the
Don't, please change your tone.
But they've been here for supporting this
But
for
we've been talking.
over a year.
I didn't say we weren't, but at the same time, there's been questions that this board has brought up that need to be addressed. So thank you.
And every time I've come here, I've said, and
That's you.
Dakota is here. No, Brian's been here with Dakota, with Brendan, and Ted has been here with Diamond every single meeting, starting in January that we've been in front of you, and before that.
So Neil, now that we're at this point though, and.
We haven't heard anything that's problematic.
No, okay, yeah,
We
and,
just need time, like we're
Right.
running out of time. I mean, it's, while we've been talking about it in the past 6 months, we've gone up, what, 150 basis points? That's financing.
Right,
This
I
is not
understand.
cheap
I
on what's
understand.
going on here. So my biggest fear and why I wanted to come up here, and yeah, why I'm being strident, is time, is the big issue. So adaptive reuse of these buildings and limiting them, you're giving me back the same body language you got bothered by. The bottom line here is, we haven't heard a problem with anything you've said. The adaptive reuse of the existing structures, having a cap on that for warehousing, so you don't wind up with more,
So you
isn't a
don't,
problem.
you don't remember me saying 2 weeks ago I wanted to see a more detailed
But
plan?
we're not gonna, but do you remember me saying, we're not gonna bring you that plan?
Then how am I- how am I supposed to give you
what's-
carte blanche to build what you wanna
But
build?
no, because you're rezoning a concept. You're acting as if, okay, so Jim got really into it really well. You can't ask me to go build a commercial project in order to get a residential project, when the residential project's people are what's necessary to bring you the retail. You can't do that. It's not going to work. And you can't ask somebody who to go double deep on the hope that it might all work out. When
So
they
why
have,
can't you
there's
do-
no incentive to do that. They might as well completely disinvest, right?
Right.
What's the incentive to invest at that point? Remember, somebody owes somebody and has to pay interest to somebody, and they have the fungibility of the cash can go somewhere else where it's better appreciated, which may even be a 10-year treasury at this point, over 3%. So
Listen,
that's
we
the
understand
problem.
about the finance, we're going through the same thing with the garage, highway garage, so I get that, everything is going up, we see all that, it went up $1 million for us, we saw that already, I understand your concern there. Why
No,
can't
no.
why can't you do lot 5 and 2 at the same time, simultaneous?
Because we don't have anyone interested in Lot 2 yet. We have someone who's interested in Lot 5, and we've said that since the very,
No, but I
very
get, you
beginning.
gotta provide, what about you said you had 2 potential people that wanted to come in?
Not to do the kinds of things
What
that
did
you're
they want to
interested
do?
in
Do they
seeing.
want to do warehousing and storage? You've
They-
never answered that question.
Tattoo parlors, other uses that are not as celebrated. I mean, county was looking for a homeless shelter. I don't think that's something you guys want in that space either. They've been looking for one in Poughkeepsie desperately for a location. I don't mean that as a threat. I'm saying is we know what you don't want. We're steering that away. But we need that percentage idea, the concept of, that's the only thing that I heard that would just absolutely lay this flat. There's no way to do that. It's not being developed as one big, it's being padded out for each different financial situation. And that's why we came in with the open development area at the top, because we said we need lots for the purposes of financing. Whoever finances the multifamily is definitely not going to be financing the commercial. And candidly, someone said the Hudson River Psych Center, that's been most of the problem that Sabre and Marty Berger's had up there, is that they can't finance. I mean, I'm not going to talk about that project, but I can tell you that's exactly the experience. And if you look at most of the places you go to for multifamily financing, they give you a bagel for the first floor retail, even when you're building a skyscraper with 500 people above. They just don't, that's not what they finance. They finance the multifamily, and they say, yeah, we understand that the retail might do something, but that's not really what we're financing. So I'm fighting with you not to fight with you to get my client something that it's perceived as a battle. I'm fighting with you because I've done a lot of this over the past bunch of years, and I want to get to the finish line for everyone. And so what I'm saying is the adaptive reuse and capping our warehouse, totally fine. Not a problem. It's not where they want to go. And it was Ted who, if I remember correctly, and Malcolm, if I'm wrong, correct me, but it was Ted who came up with this concept of splitting that building to give you the retail frontages. And it was Ted at Diamond who came up with the concept of those little shops based on something he had seen in a resort town. And he offered the green from Diamond. They want to do that. And what I can say to you comfortably is this. Based on the investment that Dakota would make if they can do the multifamily, Diamond can, for lack of a more artful word, take some of that return on investment and put it into making some level of the improvements in Lot 2, some level, without a tenant there. But they can't do all of it. They can do some of it. They can make it look a lot nicer than it is, and it's a mutually assured interest, right? So we don't need to strangle them as to, are you going to do it, tell me the truth, swear on the Bible. It's a mutual interest for them to do it up to a certain point to get those tenants in to that space, right? It's got to look better than it does right now if you really want to get people there. And if they can say, hey, I also have 144 households that are going to be across the way that'll use this, in addition to all the metrics you know about the AADT coming up and down Route 9. So they're not trying to fight with you, but they also can't fight with the fact that there are about 8 banks that finance multifamily in the country left. And they know what they need. And none of us are going to convince them otherwise. So we want to get to the finish line. We want to tell you, we want to say Malcolm's idea that he enunciated, and I'm only hearing it, I'm not seeing it on paper, of something about the adaptive reuse of the existing structures, having a cap as to the amount of warehousing, completely fine. The goal here is not to bring in warehousing as the goal. It would be nice to rent out a portion of it, use the look, just from a sustainability standpoint, someone spent the money, time, and energy and materials were mined to build those loading docks, to create concrete for them, right? Why tear them apart and have to tip them at a C&D facility, construction and demolition debris facility, or find somebody to try and put them in roadbed asphalt? Like, let's use the building, right, the most we can as is. So we're completely simpatico with you for using the buildings that are there that way. The only thing that's really a hard stop is to sort of have some kind of sliding scale threshold of 50% of the units for 50% of the building. It's just not, the timing, even if it weren't a recession and not leaning on any of that, would be like, it's not one financier for the whole thing. And so I don't see how anyone could deliver that. And I think you'd be better off just running the property as it is until it runs into the ground than taking that risk. That's just not a risk. And I don't speak for Diamond, but I'm just trying to move this forward together with you. And I'll give it back to you. Sorry, thank you.
Yeah, no, would it make my colleagues more comfortable if we were able to have either Jim or Ted or both speak to the board directly with respect to our concerns? Jim from Diamond and Ted is from Diamond also? Yeah. And who's from Dakota?
Brian.
Okay, so if we had the principals from both entities, whether it be remote or in person, be able to answer questions directly from the board, would that make my colleagues more comfortable?
I think that's what Chris kind
I
of
think
suggested before.
that's what I asked.
Oh, yeah, I think he did too.
I think that's what I
circling
asked.
back here.
This is the only meeting they've missed.
No, I know they've been here, but I can tell you, Neil, to be fair, we're not in this business, and it takes us longer to comprehend and digest some of this stuff. And when we got comments back from the planner and comments back from the county and all that, now we're seeing it a little fuller picture. And I'm sure you can answer all the questions, but I think it might be, it might make my colleagues feel a little more comfortable to hear directly from the principals.
So then I would suggest we call a special meeting, to hold that as soon as possible, because time is running. There'll be more,
Yeah,
increases, and, so we should call a special meeting for that purpose.
Well, that's what Mr. Phillips requested
No,
before.
not a workshop. I said a special board meeting.
Yeah,
You know,
for that specific
hear
purpose.
the,
That's
rate.
fine, for
Yeah.
that specific purpose.
Yeah.
It's the
I mean,
same
yeah,
principle.
That's fine.
and it can be at a time that's convenient for the principals. So, for example, if it's convenient for us and convenient for the principals to do, a Saturday at 10 a.m., I have no objection to that, because I think it's a very, it's not going to be a long meeting. It's going to be very direct and to the point, and
Well, I think we're going to have to get, Councilman, we're going to have to get the proposed, text amendments, because time is of essence, and that's the problem, because there's also going to be then the public hearing process, everything that goes on. And I sense that the time is not on our side.
so let's do this as expeditiously as possible.
So the only question I have is for the special meeting, we voting that day? Are we going to have the residents talk? What are we going to have done that day?
I think we should have the residents come
Well,
in.
a special meeting, we would have to have,
Yeah.
comments.
I understand, I just want to make sure that
The
that
residents should
whatever
be
we
able to
decide
come
to
in
do,
and
and
voice
then,
their opinions.
Certainly.
let people speak up, because I definitely want to hear.
Yeah,
And I'm proposing that the text amendments be also
That was what I was
presented,
gonna ask,
hopefully presented, you and Jim get it to the board beforehand, but that would be
Yeah.
discussed at that meeting.
But in the meantime, the changes that we have discussed, the items, that, if you're pleased with them, that we can start working on a final, not a final draft, but a clean draft, including
Discussion
the
draft.
changes that have been discussed this evening.
Yeah.
That is not to say that it is final. It is just to incorporate the elements that we've discussed so that it is in better shape. And then we'll have the principals. We can go over that proposed text. We can ask the principals any last questions that we may have, and move forward. Yeah.
And have the residents ask their questions also.
Sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, if we're
That's
still
very
making changes to
important.
the text, we need to keep
I have
keep
to
the public
have to
hearing
keep
open.
the public
The public
Public
hearing
need
open.
to
Absolutely.
understand,
Sure.
exactly.
So, Neil, when do you think that Ted and them could get here for a special meeting.
Just give us some dates, and we should be able
Well,
to do
we
something
should
from them.
rule on that tonight, call it.
Yeah, I mean, you can let us know here, and then, it doesn't need to be right this second, but
He's not gonna know tonight. Yeah.
The following week.
We could do July 7th, Thursday the 7th, and July 11th, and have two meetings right on top of each other. That way I know you usually meet the 11th. We usually
No, we
meet
won't, this year we don't, but that's no reason we can't hold that meeting. So, I mean, I think, I have no problem with the 7th and the 11th. I don't know about the rest of the council men
Oh,
and
I'm
women.
available.
Well, 7th,
Seventh is fine.
yeah, 7th is fine.
Okay.
yeah, just move forward with scheduling it, and we'll
So,
move things
well,
around.
let's right now, we can always call, but let's call a special meeting for the 7th. Do I have a motion?
Joe, does that give you enough time? Get the notice?
Can you,
Yeah.
Yeah,
you're
so,
okay?
So first of all, don't we have to adjourn this first? Before you do it?
Well, actually, I don't know if anybody from the public wants to come.
Yeah.
That's true, we have not heard from the public. so-
all right, so let's not
Do you
get ahead of
want-
ourselves.
Do you have anything
And-
to say?
And before we close it, I would like to just go over the changes that we'll make one more time, just so that we're all on the same page and we have that consensus before we draft anything. But yeah, if we want to do the public hearing briefly before that, and then we can recap on everything that we've
Sure.
discussed before we adjourn.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any comments from the public?
Hi, Marcy.
You know who I am. Marcy Wagman on Old Troy Road. And I know I don't always understand the processes and procedures that the town goes through, but I thought this was a public hearing for the zoning code changes and not a site plan. I guess we're going to have some of those amendments done, but as I go through what was presented, I don't understand the term development site and why that needs to be added to the code, and what are the implications of a divided ownership. And that leads to a reciprocal easement agreement. And I don't understand if that means whether variances won't be required. And does that mean that different owners can create their own plans and agreements without bringing that to the zoning board of appeals? So
So I think to answer your question, this is a public
You
hearing
want-
on a zone change. But as part of the questions and the concerns that the council members have, they wanted to get clarification by the applicant before, they actually rule on the zoning change, because they're concerned about potential development. That development and site plan is going to be correctly before the planning board, but this board, I think, intends to keep some sort of authority and, vision over that entire process. So the technical, yes, Jim?
You want me to address the technical elements?
Well, okay.
they're just questions because
So-
they also apply to not just this site, but they're going to apply to DeGarmo and they're going to apply to Hannaford. So I think when we go through these, I think we have to keep that in mind and not just look at this site, because, for example, height restrictions.
So with respect to the concept of development site, and Mr. Alexander had mentioned it, was for purposes of financing. The developer has requested the ability to divide the site up into different parcels for purposes of financing. And with respect to the setbacks and things of that nature, they would be eliminated within the site so that, in essence, there's no setbacks within the existing parcel. So while it's being treated, the setbacks on the outside of the parcel with respect to adjoining properties would be, would exist, but with respect to setbacks within the parcels of the development site, they do not. This board is only is reviewing the text changes for the zoning law. This is not a site plan review. This is not a subdivision review.
Right.
Those would be at the planning board subsequent to the adoption of this local law.
Right, but I'm concerned about that we spend time, and I appreciate the conversation tonight, I truly do, but I think we need to spend time going through these changes. If that happens on July 7th, that's fine, But we have to continue to remember that there's other shopping center zones, and we don't want to back ourselves into a situation that there's an unintended consequence.
So the height restrictions and those changes are for a development site, and the limitation is it 50 acres?
Yep.
50 acres, so it would not actually apply
So-
to
so-
Hannaford's or DeGarmo.
Right.
So this is written specifically for Alpine Commons
Well,
then?
what we're doing is we're creating a special permit by which a shopping center would be able to come in and propose to the town board a special, a redevelopment scheme for their shopping center. And there are certain minimums for what would qualify. So should the board adopt some variation of the text amendment, the applicant, as a property owner of a shopping center site, would have to come back and apply for a special permit for shopping center redevelopment. It would be, the prerogative of the board to grant or deny that special permit. Once that special permit was granted, then they would come before the planning board for a site plan. But one of the
So do we want to
stipulations-
encourage, for example, if someone buys Hannaford, to have the same kind of options available to them? Or do we want to preclude that from happening?
I think that the redevelopment of this site, the reasons behind the redevelopment of this site very much apply to other shopping centers in the town.
Okay, so let's just take that into consideration when we look at doing the text amendments to the zoning code, right? Because anything that we want to do should encourage those kinds of changes and business development for those shopping center areas. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Martha.
Thanks, Marcy.
And just to be fair, driving through Wappinger Plaza is painful. There's like 3 things left in the whole plaza, and the only new construction that's coming in is a Jiffy Lube, which I'm not happy about, unless they
Popeyes.
pulled out.
Actually, there's a
Popeyes
couple
is
more.
coming in.
Yeah, I thought Popeyes was.
Right.
Jen Young, yep.
Very large now, pedicure salon taking over the whole
Oh.
block.
Oh, good.
So the living permits are in our office and Jane reviewed it this time, so that we fill up most of the
And what's the status of Popeyes? Because everyone asks me every day.
permits in our office, and we're trying,
That wants to be first in line.
submitted to get it approved.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Barbara.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
Thank you.
If not, do I have a motion to adjourn the,
I'll make a motion to adjourn to July 7th.
Second.
okay, motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays or abstentions? Seeing none, the motion passed. Malcolm, yes?
I just wanted to briefly go recap everything
Okay.
that we would like to see included in the next draft of the text amendment. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that we've discussed capping the FAR permitted for the combined commercial use of warehouse and self-storage space to a number that I will calculate that will probably end up being 40 or 45% of the allowable commercial FAR. We've also discussed limiting those uses, those 2 specifically, to adaptive reuse, which means that, if you are reusing existing infrastructure, those uses are permitted, but if you are developing new buildings on commercial or mixed-use sub-districts, those uses would be precluded. And the third would be that they are only permitted, they're not permitted in the shopping center district outright, but they are permitted as part of a shopping center redevelopment special permit as granted by the town board. The second item would be the inclusion of a pedestrian and traffic circulation plan as part of the shopping center redevelopment special permit. In response to Councilman Beal's comments, I think that adding language encouraging retail use to be oriented towards pedestrian designated spaces of the site and non-retail uses directed towards non-pedestrian focused elements of the site would be a very good addition to the text amendment. Does that sound?
I think we got it all right.
I think
Yeah.
so.
And
Do us a
get the
favor,
draft.
Send that, so we'll just take a look to make sure,
Yeah.
give us a day or so. If we have anything else, we'll give it to you, so you got plenty of time to turn it around.
Before
Yeah.
Just want to think about it a little bit, that's all.
Yeah,
I
just
think he
send it to
captured
us.
everything, but I just want to make sure.
Absolutely.
So
Would
took
you
a lot
like
of notes.
another follow-up email, just sort of
Well, I
itemizing
think
everything, or
just
just?
summarize
That would be
what you
good.
just said
Yeah.
to us in an email.
Yeah.
And
I
also,
think that would be good.
include the latest conceptual
Yes.
overlays with these, square footage that is on the last email you sent me. That's very
Yeah, I'll
informative.
include both of those conceptual plans as well.
And
Perfect.
also include those photos, the
Colorful.
streetscape type photos that you put
Yeah.
in there.
Yeah, and we didn't discuss it tonight, but Jim and I are also responding to comments from the county. Nothing substantial, just, clearing things up, addressing the comments from the county. And so those changes will be included, and I'll include a breakdown of those changes as well.
Thank you.
So those comments are the ones that were sent on the county asking us about the veterans.
Asking
stuff.
for additional language on how the veterans' housing would operate, and also asking for a distinction between open space, natural conservation lands, and recreation / low-impact development lands, which I think is a
So
good
you think you'll
comment.
have that answer before the meeting? Because one of the things was, they said that you needed a majority plus one, too. If you're going to override that decision, you would need to
Well,
say why you're going to do that. So I just want to make sure you're going to answer it before, so we don't have this discussion on July 7th.
We're going to make the changes, and then we have to resubmit to the county.
Okay.
Yeah, they have two obligatory, comments that we
Right.
have to respond to. They do have other comments that
Right.
we.
I just want to make sure they take care of that before, because otherwise I don't want that to be a showstopper if we're going to do this thing on the
Yeah.
7th. That's all.
Again, I think, as Councilman Beal had indicated, the bigger issue is the transportation,
The road.
the roadway access. I think, the other two we can address, but that's the one that, again, Neil, you need to make sure, that on the 7th that we have to vote on that, but on the next meeting, that you provide us a report on the status of those discussions. Okay.
Thank you. So I'll make a motion that we have a special meeting on Thursday, July 7th at 7 PM for the purposes of further discussion and public hearing for the local law of 2022, which would amend Chapter 240 zoning of the town code with respect to the shopping center district and large-scale mixed use.
I'll second it.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays or abstentions? Seeing none, motion passed. Thank you, Malcolm.
Thank you.
Neil. Thank you,
very
everyone.
much.
Just a question also, was there a need for an additional special meeting, or are we going to wait until?
I think let's wait,
Okay,
see what we do, and see how the comments
See how
come.
it goes.
because we have
But,
a,
I think since we have July 4th, Jim and Malcolm, we need to make sure that you get to us the comments as soon as possible, so that also we can get it out there in the public, too.
just keep in mind, we go into July and August, our schedule's a little bit different, so our regular meeting in July is actually the 18th.
18th.
And our regular meeting in August is, I believe, the third Monday,
Yeah,
is that
third
correct?
Monday.
I think it's, yeah.
So
I have it at
there's
home.
one meeting per month, one regular meeting per month.
So that you didn't realize the 18th is a conflict with the planning board. We're on the
All right,
same
then
minute as
we'll-
planning board, so, I mean, we can't change it now, but just.
Why don't
so you
we,
know.
based on how much workload we have at the July 18th meeting, we can
Yeah.
decide how to alter that if we
Right.
need
Yeah.
to.
The meeting in August is August 22nd.
Oh, it is the 22nd?
22nd.
All right, either way, we should discuss in July
Yep.
how to facilitate the August meeting, because I know that certain people have fluid vacation schedules in August, so we got to make sure that,
A set vacation schedule in August.
we have to make sure
Mandatory.
everyone's in here.
Okay, very good. Next item for the remaining few items, I guess, is the a motion to open the public, portion for sections, 6, 7, and 8 of the agenda.
Make a motion.
Okay, motion and second, all in favor? Aye. Any nays or abstentions? Seeing none, motion passed. So now we have any public comments with respect to the items that we have. There are only a few items, actually.
No comments? Comments? I make a
Seeing
motion
none?
to close
So
it.
now I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Okay, motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? Seeing none, motion passed. I guess Jessica, both of you. We'll talk about that, the March
What did you do? No kidding. Okay. I got one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So last year, we had Downstate Volleyball that came to us and put in a new net, or donated to us, and it was put in by Buildings and Grounds, an entirely new net system for 2 courts at the volleyball courts at Pylene. So that facility, I don't know how often any of you drive past there, but it is one of the highest use facilities that we have. And putting in those new nets then does kind of get the ball rolling of making additional improvements to that site, because having a really great net system but not enough sand to have the regulation size courts, you know, you're not going all the way with it. And this is where I'll let Steve step in, because he got the estimate and understands the need for the additional truckload of dirt.
Before you let Steve step in,
Yes.
one question.
Sure.
Is the Volleyball Association organization paying us any rental going forward? I know that part last year was the net, so what's the deal?
We signed a 2-year agreement
Okay.
with them that was approved by the board. So last year and this year, there is not.
Okay.
But regardless of that, this facility, with the amount of use that it gets, it's worth investing in
Will
completely.
you put on the recreation site, it's not for their exclusive use, right?
No, no,
There'll be
not at all.
rental of that space, you know,
There-
for other organizations, so we can maintain it as well?
It is actually available for rental through our website
Okay.
at this time. However, what I mean when I say highest use is highest used by the general public as an open court facility. If you drive past there spring, summer, fall in the evening, it's packed. You go back,
Sure.
past there on the weekend, it's packed. We have this agreement with Downstate for them to be able to use it at set times, at set places. I don't necessarily see us having a long-term rental structure for it, because I think it would end up just discouraging that great public use that we have of the facility.
So really, the only rental we're going to get out of it,
Is
it's already
it-
on, it's on a 2-year term already, so we're not getting any money this year because they paid for the nets last year. And if they decided to use next year, we'll start up
Then
again.
we would have to
Okay.
start charging.
So we won't get
Correct.
any additional revenue, but we're going to spend some money, which is good, because it's for the residents, that's what they want to use, and I think it's a great
Exactly.
investment.
When do they start?
They've already started.
Are they
Oh,
good?
good.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
they've already started for this year.
So the next question is for Steve then. So when are you, if you were to get this approved tonight, when would you be able to get the sand and then apply it down at the
I
site?
imagine, it took me quite a while to source the sand initially, and I didn't have a cost on it the last time we spoke. But if we were approved tonight, I imagine I could get the sand within a week's time, scheduling the delivery, and then I can get it in to the court within a couple days after that. You know, I did the calculations, I needed 50 yards to bring the level up to where it would be regulation, and both size and depth, and the initial amount that you had approved paid for about half of that.
So you need another $2,500 tonight?
Right, and then that should hold it for, you know, indefinitely. It may at one point need a little topping up, but not the amount that we're talking now.
So if the supervisor's okay with it, what I like to do is, I know, Jessica, you brought a resolution up here
Yes.
for authorization of transferring of funds. The board's okay at this point in time?
Yeah.
I'd like to authorize Steve, or actually Jessica, to transfer $2,500 from her 423-B fund over to the B fund balance, actually move the money from B fund balance over for $2,500. This is whereas the town of Wappinger is engaged in the project to enhance the volleyball facilities at Marks Field, and whereas it has been determined by the supervisor of buildings and grounds, meaning Steve, that the project requires an additional truckload of sand to be complete, and whereas the budget line for Marks Field does not currently contain the funds. So I make a authorization or a resolution to transfer the $2,500 to get this thing
Is there
moving.
a
and get
second?
sand.
I'll
Second.
second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? Seeing the motion pass. Steve, stay up. Generator. Well, you're here, you know, might as well address the generator.
Well, I did get the quote on that. I don't have that in front of me, but You know, they're ready to go on it if approved, and it will involve
You don't remember
a
the
few
quote? Do we have
agencies
it?
coordinating efforts.
Wasn't there, I don't
Isn't
have
there
it in
like an
front of me.
estimate or
Didn't you have
something
a
close to?
proposal?
Yeah.
I thought there was a resolution written.
Yeah, the amount is
Yeah,
left
the amount's
blank.
not filled in.
Amount's not
We
filled
have
in.
no
The
amount.
amount is blank.
I didn't bring the quote with me. I forwarded the information.
Jim,
No.
can
It
you,
is in the,
'cause
it's
I know
somewhere
Jim
between
got it.
8,000 and 9,000 for the
Yeah.
the electrical work.
What's that?
We can't write a blank check tonight.
no,
Yeah,
no,
I
no, we're not,
understand.
yeah.
I just,
Let me see.
Okay, the estimate is 9,400,
9,400.
okay.
and it was, and the vendor is Costa Electric Inc. Costa Electric Inc.
So,
No, you weren't, I'll forward it to you, Joe.
so why don't we have a, resolution not to exceed $10,000?
Move.
Second.
Second.
Okay, motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? Seeing none.
Where's the
Steve,
money coming
you
out
got
of?
passed.
Where are we getting the money from? Is it fund balance, or is it coming out of,
Steve, you had
Is it
nothing
coming out of
more in
your
your
No,
budget?
line.
I don't, it would,
It would be a
you'd
fund
have to
balance.
move it from
All right, yeah,
fund
move-
balance into the town hall.
So you
all
can
right,
amend it.
let me restate the motion. We need to not deplete his budget on June 30th. So, because you know that's what'll happen.
Yeah.
He'll be coming back next meeting with no
Right.
money. So I move that we authorize up to 10,000 from a fund for the purposes of whatever we're doing with
So
this
whatever your
generator.
line is. Do you know what the line number is, by any chance?
162450.
So from a fund balance to that line number.
Okay, and this is, for the record, for the electric panel, for the
For the
generator,
generator,
which
yeah.
keeps
The transfer
blowing out.
switch.
Right.
Transfer switch,
The
yeah,
transfer switch, yeah, okay.
fairly significant. Okay, motion and second.
Done.
So,
Aye.
yes.
All in
Yeah,
favor?
no problem.
Okay, done.
Aye.
Thank you.
Oh, and just for the record, Steve had said the transfer switch has already been purchased. This was on the labor, that was just for the
This is the
labor.
labor for it, that's right, which is the significant portion. But this is what has, we determined, caused the problem with respect to the generator constantly going on and off and
Correctly,
causing
yeah.
the lights to blink.
Steve, I know this is like a crazy question. Does this fix everything?
Yes.
Please, Chris.
For
don't jinx
this
us.
month.
Yeah, really.
Don't jinx it.
Never ask that question.
Right
It
down.
fixes everything as far as the generator and standby power is concerned. Let's
Steve,
So
what-
clarify that. a
But,
little.
one of the,
If it fixes everything, then I'm out of a job.
Steve, one
Oh,
of
we have a
the,
lot of things for you to do.
one of the items that has been suggested, and I certainly want you to look into it, is putting some sort of stanchion protection so that as we get some drivers in the lot that are trying to avoid the potholes and collapsing pavement, and Tim, please address that in a minute. I'd like to have some protection around that generator so it doesn't get hit. Okay, so can you look into that and come back to the board and recommend something, Tim, maybe Wilson can work with Steve as to what would be the best design to protect that, okay? Thank you, thanks. Anything else that you're here?
You tell me.
No.
I have
Well,
nothing.
there
I mean,
is
we are working
just-
on the checklist. but-
Just one comment. I did authorize Steve to do this. We had the Public Health Department had come out and done their examination, of the campsite, of Mart's for the summer camp program, and a couple things that needed to be addressed, which have been, we got our approvals, everything, and Jessica, Steve, and Cheryl did a great job. But while one of the recommendations to make some changes was actually cut out some dead branches of a tree that was right there along the sidewalk, near the restroom facilities. Well, Steve was in the tree. I don't know whether or not he was climbing it itself or what he did, but he discovered that that tree was seriously rotted inside. So we got Orcio to go and cut it down immediately, so as if a windstorm came, it wouldn't go and damage some things. So Steve did a great job
It was
getting
positioned so that if it had, it eventually was going to fall, and when it did come down, it was going to do, at minimum, property damage, because it was actually surrounded by buildings, the tennis courts, lighting system. It was going to hit something, so.
Did you have the money in your budget? You need a budget transfer?
Right.
You do have the money in your budget?
Well, no, we wouldn't need a budget transfer, but we'll bring that to you the next.
You're gonna-
Yeah, once we get the invoice, but I authorize.
So Chris, you jinxed us.
Yeah, no, well, that's why I mentioned it, to make sure, it wasn't on the jinx list, you know, it was actually something that we had to do for safety purposes.
So you said Steve climbed the tree.
Well, that's what he was telling
I've been stuck
me,
on
you
that
know.
thought.
That's over and beyond the Call of Duty.
Okay,
No wonder it had to come down. It's the end of it.
okay.
So are we going into items of special consideration, because I'll keep them up there?
I mean, keep them up there. you
Steve,
know.
why don't you get back up again?
Don't sit down.
Go ahead, keep them up
I'm
there.
having trouble with the pollen today.
Yeah, so am I.
Apologize.
Hey, so just a couple of quick questions. We still get some questions on some things, so I just want to get clarification for some of the residents. Any update on the Wi-Fi for Robinson Lane? Can we get Sal or somebody from your area to run that line in there, so then we can get a Verizon or somebody to go ahead?
I'm
and-
supposed to have a talk in the next 2 days, I think, with a person from Altice. But
Yeah, I mean, doing that, the problem is getting in communication with the provider.
Yeah, well, that's-
They won't return phone calls.
Yep.
I can, if we put the lines in, unless they hook them up to something, you're still not gonna have.
Oh, no, what I want to do is have the line in there so we
So
get
we can
approval,
tell.
we're ready to go.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's not something that we have the expertise in, and we don't have the equipment to run that length of a line. The conduit is there. I don't have the equipment that's needed to pull a length of line that far.
How big is the conduit, Sid?
It's a 4-inch conduit, so, and it's.
Gotta get a cable.
I measured, I think I measured 1,200 feet in from the road.
Yeah, that's what you
so-
told me. Okay.
Did we ever find
so-
out? Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. So just two more. This has to do with Rockingham, so this is our favorite subject. Guardrail, we said we're going to go ahead and get that big cylinder moved out of there as soon as Mike's done with the paving, correct? So we're going to take the big cement cylinder out, we're going to put the
Put a piece of
guardrail in.
guardrail
So
in.
that'll happen hopefully mid-August, maybe?
I have to speak to Mike about it.
Okay, can we just get that, because I get a lot of questions and of course, I know we talked about the trench, so we're going to take care of that as well on the
I
next.
started working on that yesterday,
Okay, all right, thank you.
and yes, I expect to have it finished either tomorrow or the following day.
Okay.
Any other darts to throw at Steve?
Well,
Yeah, I do.
this is- this
I got one
isn't
more.
a
Oh, you
dark-
got one more.
I got one more, sorry. Fence over there, over at Rockingham. Any idea? I know we talked about Adams doing it. I guess they're running a little bit behind because of labor shortages, and also talking about the fence we're gonna put over at Rockingham.
In the front.
Yeah, in the front.
Next to the playground?
Yeah.
He told me fall.
Okay. Hopefully that comes through.
I
Okay.
can't change that.
Right, but it's a combination of labor shortages and also trying to get the
Yeah,
fence
the
itself.
amount of
Okay.
work that's out there.
I'm sorry, I'm done now.
This is easy. Did we ever find out if the phone worked out at,
Yeah, I sent an email out.
I could have missed it, I'm
The
sure.
line has been disconnected.
so, oh,
There
it's
is no phone.
disconnected, there's
Yeah,
no phones.
There's no phone at Robinson Lane.
Okay, so how do we get that fixed because of safety issues that could
You're gonna
occur?
cable down a 4-inch pipe, 1,500 feet.
We can't just call the telephone company and
I've
tell them to
tried.
turn it
There's
on?
no-
I think
line.
Vic is working on that right now
No.
with Altice, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Can I make a suggestion? If you
Yes.
guys still have ITC as your provider?
Yes.
They used to do our office in Newburgh, and they have all the connections and everything, and I might recommend you reach out
Oh,
to ITC.
that's a good suggestion. We can
Thank
reach
you.
out tomorrow to
Thank you very much.
IPC.
Rabbit on getting all the
Okay.
right people and all the right stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do that tomorrow.
Is that Frontier Communications out there?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the other issue.
And it's Frontier, and they told me that they do not have a connection close enough to that park to provide us.
Okay, well, but I'll contact
But I like
IPC.
your idea.
I'll do
thank
that.
you.
Okay, thanks, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, we have spotty cell service out there, and we have no landline, so that's a
landline.
Yeah,
concern.
that's a problem,
I
yeah,
mean, God forbid you have an emergency.
exactly.
Okay.
So, thank you, Steve.
Mr. Moot, it's your turn. Please.
No, Steve should come back.
And I would like to also just thank Steve, although it's, pulling a few hairs on his head, but thanks for cleaning up, the admin building and some of the other places that there. And I think, Councilman Casella and I had, talked with you about an initiative where we would get some of his, team to do perhaps every other Saturday for a few hours, and they are willing to do that. That would be, Steve would have to come back for some additional budget requests, but the purpose of that the councilman and I had discussed was to help, clean up, some of our brush, trees, and things that aren't able to be attended to during the week because of all these other projects, right, Al?
And also help clean up some of the number of projects we have out there
Right.
as well. So that was really the intent as well. So, yeah, we talked about it. And I think, Steve, right now, you said you have some budget coverage because you're short some staff. So right now, you probably have a little bit of money in your budget to cover some of it. But
Right.
at some point in time, we'd have to do
Yeah.
a budget transfer.
So I think maybe as we talk about next month with the meeting on, the financial update, maybe Steve, you and I, we can talk about, what
But we just
additional
wanted to
amount,
throw
but
the
at
concept
least-
out there to the rest of
Yeah.
the board and,
That's right.
talk about and get an
That's why I
agreement.
mention it now,
Yep.
so we can
Yep.
cover that.
If you don't mind my mentioning, just so the folks in town here, I do have 3 seasonal groundskeeper positions open. And if anyone in town has anybody that might be looking for work, send them our way, because we
Okay.
are very short on help.
Yeah, extreme.
They have to be 18?
Yes,
They
it
have
needs
to
to
be
be
18.
18 because.
Okay.
Barbara, did you just volunteer? You said you're retired, so.
I'm a senior citizen, I need extra money.
By the way, if
Go
you.
talk to Steve.
By the way, if our residents haven't seen it, our senior garden club has done a great job. We did also get the, Lehigh that the town had authorized to come in and do our, rose bed. And so the gazebo is looking great, especially with the seniors, box, 2 boxes they put out by the gazebo. And as I think everybody's seen, the redbud trees, came in as well. Al and Lehigh had to go to Connecticut to find them, but, things are looking real nice for our events that we have here.
Also, a good point to bring up is if you look at the gazebo today as well, they did a really nice job. So between Grace, Nancy, Teresa, a bunch of them out there,
Yep.
the other day fixing it up, looks really nice out there by the gazebo. So great work. I'm sure I missed a few other people, Ann and a few other, but we really want to thank you because it looks remarkably so much better than it did before. And I know it took a lot of time and effort, and I know Councilman Phillips was a big part of it, as well as the supervisor, and getting some funding for that and the board. So it's very appreciated by them. So great job to that team that did an excellent job out there by the gazebo. So thank you.
Barbara, you can join the garden club now if you want.
I killed everything I touched.
Well, then have Karen. Karen can, because Karen doesn't kill it. Tim?
I hope she's just talking about plants.
Tim?
I'm not going there. I'm not going there.
Yes, good evening. So
Thanks.
just wanted to update the board on status of Carnwath. So we have the Carnwath Manor House that we did the structural evaluation. Kind of updated everybody. I think it was back in April. This is kind of following in terms of our discussions and trying to come up with a master plan. If you scroll down, Joey, just go to the pictures there if you can. So that the critical component now is this wall collapse. It was kind of a newer discovery, and the building seems to be in a state of what we would call dynamic equilibrium. In other words, it's standing there, our structural engineer went through, it's not in imminent danger in his opinion and CPL's opinion to fall down, but it does need attention. And I think, our recommendation is, look, if you're gonna have a long-range plan for the building, we need to address some of these items as they reveal themselves. We don't have a crystal ball and say, well, what's going to be next? But our opinion is we need to fix what's obvious, and that's this hole in the foundation.
And that would be what, Tim, what's your recommendation?
We're ballparking 25,000 and thinking that it would be they'd have to remove the stones that are loose, hopefully remove enough to tie into, and then pour concrete in that. It wouldn't be like a restoration of putting the stone back.
Right. Concrete rebar and.
And then there may be some miscellaneous site grading around, because we discovered, there's old porches and roofs and things that used to be there to drain water away from the building, and those are all gone, so now these areas are getting inundated with runoff. So, again, that was kind of the big thing is, should we move forward? Do you want us to come up with like a little bid package for this and get it out on the street? Something like this ideally gets done before frost. And then, you know, some other observations were, like I said, the timbers weren't all that bad in all the areas. We were encouraged by some of the brickwork and tiebacks through multi-layered brick walls. There is significant repointing that's gonna need to occur.
Is
but-
that included in the 25?
No, this is strictly just the significant damage of that area right there, which is about, say, maybe it goes back 10 feet by the time you try to tie it back in. But it doesn't lose sight of the fact that we have the tarp on. It has dried out the building considerably, but that's not a permanent solution, right? So we had said, what was it, 2 to 3 years maybe?
Yeah, 3 years.
So we're probably year 2, I think, right?
Entering it, yeah.
So, again, you don't make decisions tonight, but it's the kind of thing where we need to be committed if that's what we're gonna do, you know, so. That's it on the Manor House, and then we're still proceeding on the ADA community bathroom project. That was a CDBG grant, and then separate from that is the MIG was like a $50,000 grant, Joey, for the water service, so.
Right.
I think you were looking with Maria to finalize the MIG, or, I saw the letter, but I don't know if there's anything further to that.
Just needs to be signed and sent up to the county.
Okay. So here's our floor plans, like internally, there'll be modifications to bathrooms to allow ADA access. Initially, it's a seasonal use, so we're not looking to totally heat the space through the winter. A significant portion of the work is exterior with grading and walkways so that they can get up in there, but
Yeah.
we'll have some smaller split system units, I think, incorporated, and maybe as bid alternates to get pricing. But we'll stick to the core script of what's required for the grant for this first step, so.
Thank you.
We're about 30% through our design drawing, so it's probably gonna be another month or 2 before we're ready to go to bid, but we're progressing on it, so.
Good.
Report, have you gotten a report back on the parking lot? I saw the surveyor when he was out here for town hall, not for that place, but for here.
I haven't seen the final map, but we know it's really flat, but our surveyors were out as part of the parking lot restoration. Drillers come out, I think it's week of July 11th, I think, so not, I'd have to look.
So
it up,
the
but-
surveyor, and talking with the surveyor, said it looks like, through his lens, like a roller coaster as far as the severe damage to the parking space, because it's
you
like
can
a
see
sponge
the-
underneath,
Yeah.
as we know. Okay,
So
so you
that's
say
in the
next
works.
month?
No, well, it's July, if you give me 2 seconds, I keep forgetting the date, but,
Because we need to have solutions and drainage and all that, because I'm not sure if we'll get through
oh,
another
well, when I
winter.
say July, that's when the driller gets here.
Oh, okay. We need to try to at least look at, is there some sort of temporary fix?
July 25th is when it's on the schedule.
That's pushing it as far as
Everything
getting
is
before
so
the
booked
frost
out,
comes.
so.
Oh, yeah, it's a mess.
Well, then, after that, then you'll be able to look into the drainage.
Right.
And what we need to do.
We'll have some recommendations. I mean, I'm hesitant to say it get fixed
No, I
this
understand.
this
I
season,
understand.
but
No.
we'd have it ready to go by spring anyway.
Okay.
Okay.
But if there's
Perhaps, with some of the parking, this is just for you to consider or recommend to us, the extreme back portion, probably not much we can do, and we may have to rope that off, but at least, you'll recall last year, I think Mike Sheehan did some patchwork.
Right.
Which actually has held in those areas that he did the patchwork, so maybe there's something so we at least have the side lots and, some
I was
of
gonna
that
say, we
fully
may be
functional.
able to address like the back
Right.
area that's critical
Right.
this year prior
Okay.
to the fall, but we weren't gonna retool the whole parking lot.
Yeah,
We were just-
right, no. But the surveyor was saying that it's really from about midway down on each side, and the whole back area.
Yeah.
So if the side, I'm just saying, if the side areas were better and could be patched up,
Yeah.
then at least we have some secure space that we're able to park during the winter
We
months.
could probably make that happen. We'll know pretty
something like
quickly
that.
once the drilling
Okay.
stuff.
Okay.
But I mean, it's
Thanks.
pretty
Thank you.
obvious.
Yeah. And one other thing, update in Spook Hill, I saw that there's a delay because the supplier can't get the materials, and is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So I've been asking them when's the delivery of the equipment, and, Randy sent a note just recently, and I looped in Leor. And Leor's saying it's backed up till probably an October project.
Wow.
Okay. Not a
But the,
surprise, though.
Steve, you know, the first phase is basically done, correct?
Yeah, the building's
Okay.
complete.
Okay, and Tim, you or John Bodendorf was going to look into the flaking of the concrete. Have you looked into that? If not, then report back to us and see if
This
there's
is the
some.
new concrete slab?
Slab and then the curb.
Oh,
The curb was also flaking. You know, the curb was flaking worse than the slab.
Okay.
Okay, so if you can make a note and have
Sure.
him do it, he was the one that was, I
Okay.
think, addressing it.
It's the first I've heard of it. but-
Oh, okay. Okay, thanks.
Just two things real quick, Tim. So fence for Robinson, you're going out to bid now?
Supposed to bid on Wednesday, this Wednesday, day after tomorrow.
Okay, good. And then from the, just Spook Hill real quick, so the equipment's delivered in October, or they're gonna, and start the work in
Everything.
October?
He thinks it'll be done this fall.
Okay.
I pressed him before frost.
Okay, very good.
You can understand, this is the vendor, this is.
Okay.
Understood.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. But thanks for your efforts, and I know Tim, the team have been staying on top of it, and it is frustrating, you know, I'm sure.
And I asked the
even-
vendor to reply on record to
Right,
everybody, so
right.
I'm
Yeah,
not,
that's what we've been insisting
not
to get them.
getting anything out of this.
Okay. You know, one other comment that, new business I have, you know, we had been drawing down intentionally our supply of the town guide, you know, so as to use up what we have. I think we're down to maybe around 100, you know, copies left, so we've done a great job, and like in various events, including Festival at the Falls and so forth. So Joey and I have collaborated with Joey doing, of course, the layout and the design of what you have in front of you, and as was presented tonight. And of course, everybody should take a look at it. You know, we, at this point in time, based on increasing prices, you know, Joey's gotten a quote that for 1,400, you know, copies, it will cost $4,057. You know, and last time when we got around 2,000 or more, it was a little bit more expensive, but not much. But I think, you know, that among the key changes that have been made is when we look at the identification, particularly with respect to our you know, activities, and keying it into, everybody has in here, you'll see keying it into the box that you can scan, so we can get information off the website. We did want to also address our some of our youth, you know, a couple coloring pages that maybe sets ultimately the basis for Bill's sons to, you know, do some drawing. But I think this is something, whether or not we need to probably authorize, you know, no later than the next meeting, you know, but if everybody takes a look at this on the board, you know, then please get your comments, you know, back to us so that we can make some edits. Joey, do you want make any other comments, please?
I was just going to comment and piggyback off of what the supervisor had said. You're going to see a few new additions and a few changes to the guide. We try to stay consistent with our branding each year, but with this, you're going to see QR codes. Because the supervisor always wants more every year. We want to expand it, but county printer can't handle more than 100 pages. So our way around it this year was doing a number of QR codes, which link directly back into our website. And we've been doing very well, actually, with our QR codes.
Right.
We've been putting them out in the parks and a number of different places around town. And the feedback that we've been getting, as well as the website analytics, have been very favorable. So
We figured, for example, a way we could, you know, get some more content in was that we actually cut back on some of the recreation pages, because all we have to do is go with the QR code and get in there and get all the up-to-date, since schedules change, rather than nailing it down here. So that was a driving factor, you know, behind the change here, and we think that it will be even better received, you know, because of the nature of information. So again, please take a look at it, and then we need to finalize this and get it off before printing costs rise again. Okay? I have no other comments. Anybody else have any before we go into executive, you know, session?
This looks great. Good work.
Yeah, it's very nice.
It
Yeah.
does.
For executive session, we have a couple issues, which include our discussion about Labor Council, and sorry, people have waited late, filling some board positions, and we have a complaint, that has been filed, and I don't think Craig's here, but we have an IT security issue. Barbara, maybe, okay, then Barbara, you and Craig can come in, but we'll first address, I think, our Labor Council position. So do I have a motion to go in executive session?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Okay, motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays or abstentions? Seeing none, motion passed, and we'll go down to the Recreation Department.